Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you to our board meeting tonight. To access translation, please click on the globe icon below or at the John. You can go to the corner of the room to get translation. Para acceder, traducción, aprieten el botón del globo in Zoom. We are heading into our closed session meeting for tonight. Before we do, we're here to listen to any public comment there might be about our closed session items. The public gets 2 minutes for public comment per speaker. The closed session items that we'll be discussing are public employee appointment, public employee discipline, dismissal, release complaint, and public employee performance evaluation. Do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Thank you so much. Okay, everyone, we will reconvene for open session at 6:30 tonight. Thank you. I would like to welcome all of you to our board meeting tonight. To access translation, please click on the globe icon below on the Zoom screen, or at the John, you can go to the corner of the room or the back of the room to get translation. Para acceder a traducción, por favor aprieten el botón del globo en Zoom o en the John pueden ir a la esquina del gimnasio. We are returning from closed session. After opening procedures, the public will have the opportunity to make public comment. The board recently voted to change the public comment format. We have opportunities on non-agenda items in person, through Zoom app, and by telephone at the beginning of the meeting. Public comment will last 1 hour. The time allotted for each speaker is 2 minutes. If you're attending the meeting in person, you will need to submit a request to address the board form to indicate your desire to speak on an agenda item. After it's been turned into staff, they are placed in order of when they are turned in. We also call on speakers one at a time and switch between public comment at the John in person and one in Zoom. If participating via Zoom, you will need to raise your hand by clicking on the appropriate icon in the Zoom app or by pressing *9 if accessing the meeting by phone. No yielding of time or substitution of speakers is permitted. The public will also have an opportunity to make public comment on agenda items after the staff presentation for each discussion and action item. The public will have 10 minutes per item and 1 minute per speaker. Due to the Brown Act, board members cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda and do not usually respond to items presented in public comment. Now, let's all move to opening procedures. First, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody, please rise. Dr. Hurst, please lead us through the pledge.
Absolutely. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Hurst. Now we are moving to our land acknowledgement. We recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwekma, Karkin, Ohlone peoples, and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy. Dr. Hurst, can you please do roll call?
Absolutely, sir. President Gonzalez-Hoy,
Present.
Trustee Clerk Smith-Folds is absent for the moment. Trustee Reckler,
Good evening, I'm present.
Trustee Phillips. For the moment, he is absent. Trustee Christian,
Good evening, President.
Trustee Santos. For the moment, she is absent. Trustee Barone,
Good evening, President.
thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hurst. Dr. Hurst, do we have a report out from closed session?
Absolutely, sir. We would like to share with the board and the public that we have for Martin Luther King Elementary, a principal has been approved by the board as follows. President Gonzalez-Hoy, yes. Trustee Smith-Folds, yes. Trustee Reckler, yes. Trustee Christian was absent at this one, and Trustee Phillips was absent. And the new principal for MLK is Helen Burke. We'd also like to announce the elementary principal for Harding. The vote was as follows: President Gonzalez Hoy, yes. Trustee Reckler, yes. Trustee Christian here was yes. Trustee Phillips was absent. Trustee Smith Folds was absent. And the new principal for Harding Elementary is Indira Bell. For Kensington Elementary principal, the vote was as follows. President Gonzalez Hoy, yes. Trustee Reckler, yes. Trustee Christian, yes. Trustee Phillips was absent for this one. Trustee Smith Folds was absent. And the principal for Kensington is Kim Jordan. That concludes the report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hurst. Okay, we are now going to move to public comment. Just a reminder, public, please raise your hand if you're on Zoom, if you would like to make public comment. If you are at Dijon, please turn in a request to speak to the board. This is on non-agenda items. Staff, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we have one in person, and that's Ms. Kim Chamberlain.
Okay, Ms. Chamberlain, we're ready for you. And then if we could put up the clock, please. Let's give us 1 second, sorry. We're almost ready for you as well. There you go. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kimberly Chamberlain, IFPTES Local 21 Chapter President for SSA. We've had a pretty rough start this year. Things are going fast and furious for us for the end of the school year on top of everything. There are a lot of anxious people and students wondering what's going on, how our next year is going to go. We're getting personnel having anxiety about how they're to do their job, what they're doing their job for. We need the support out there. They want to make sure that students are coming to the campuses. We're looking at budgets. We see that there are cuts coming all over the place. We also understand that we are under stress, only way to put it, from the county to make extreme budget cuts to make sure that we can continue on as a district. But at the same time, how do we offer our students quality education and quality academics to continue coming to this school district? There has to be a way, there has to be an idea out there to collaborate with all of the unions, all of the community, and figuring this out. Is there any possible way that we have properties, we have other means to adjust so that we can provide these students, teachers, staff, quality education, and continue on having them come to our school district? I'm very concerned at this point in our year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next public comment is Maisha Harris Gash. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening. Happy Wednesday. Okay, so as the school year is coming to a close, the days are getting challenging. For those of you who are basketball fans, like that fourth quarter that Tatum had for the Celtics the other day. So yesterday I had a little moment, like, what the heck? Two of my students forgot who their teacher is. I'm like, you lying to me about your work and you're blaming the teacher? Oh no, we don't do that. You sleeping in my class and catching an attitude with me because you know that is not an option in my class. And then you get caught sleeping in another class, and then I tell the parent to bring you down to my room. And you catch an attitude with her and then with me again. So y'all, can y'all say patience? Deep breathing. Woosah. So today, I had to remind my kids that I will never, ever accept rude and disrespectful behavior quietly, because I love me and I respect me. And I want them to grow up and love and respect themselves, understand when someone disrespects them, they have the right to speak up for themselves. So I close today with them by saying, I'm your greatest advocate on this campus, and don't burn this bridge. I am with you guys for a lifetime. And if that's what you want, that is what you will have for me, because that's the type of educator I am. And being an educator is my purpose and my passion. And that's why when you guys are rude and disrespectful to me, I need to let you know, because I'm not just in it for the moment. I am in this for the long haul, for a lifetime. So that's just what I wanted to share. So I pray everybody has a wonderful, blessed night. Good night.
And our last public comment is Ellen Bailu. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm calling on behalf of my second grader and parents in the district who may be worried about the fiscal state of our district and what's happening with the county. I remember in March of last year when we began what I see as a slow march to the state taking over our school district related to our financial concerns. The district has a long history of papering over holes and the dam with one-time monies and things like this. And at the time, I remember there was an unpopular vote on a reduction in force that came before the board. And at that point, when the board didn't take the courageous vote, the very unpopular vote for that reduction in force, I emailed my trustee and I said I was really worried about the future and the state taking over. And she emailed me back and she said, "Don't worry, there's a long way to go before that. We have a long way to go before that." And it's been over a year, and I can't really tell that the board is prepared to make the courageous votes that lead us to stability, financial stability in the district. And I'm really, really concerned about it. If we have the state take over, we lose Dr. Hurst, who we worked so hard to get and who is making brave changes to try to work towards equity goals for the district. We lose his staff, who's working hard to provide transparency and address the issues in our district. I don't want to see that happen. I want our help. I want our district to be healthy. I want us to make. I want us to be capable of making tough votes that preserve the future of our district. And I don't see that happening, and I need more accountability from the board on this issue. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much to the three individuals that made public comment. We are now going to move forward with our agenda. Board, we are now on agenda review and adoption. Without objection, we'll approve. Okay, so move. Thank you so much. Now we're moving to the April 26 minutes. Without objection, we'll also approve the minutes from the April 26th. Wonderful. So approved. Now we're going to move to resolution number 2223-82, Jewish American Heritage Month. Ms. Sanders, this is your item.
Thank you very much, President Gonzalez-Hoy. Whereas anti-Semitic violence and hate crimes continue to impact the lives and freedom of Jewish people throughout the world and in the United States, as well as in our local community, and whereas locally, many Jewish leaders or Jewish members of the West Contra Costa community continue to practice the cultural values of Tikkun Olam, repair of the world, and Gemilut Chasadim, acts of loving kindness through public service and direct support of our WCCUSD families, including through the efforts of the Greater Richmond Interfaith Project and Temple Beth Hillel to provide continuous access to food and essential resources for local families. Now therefore be it resolved that the West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Education and WCCUSD Superintendent proclaim the month of May 2023 as Jewish American Heritage Month. Be it further resolved that the West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Education encourages activities to deepen appreciation of the multicultural and multi-faith diversity of the West Contra Costa community, to develop understanding across cultures, and to reduce incidences of bias and hate.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sanders. Board, is there a motion to approve this resolution?
Sorry about that. I'll go ahead and move Board Resolution 2223-82, Jewish American Heritage Month.
I second.
Thank you so much. Board, are there any comments? Okay, let's move to a vote. Tonight we'll start with trustee Baron. Trustee Baron, go ahead.
Baron, yes.
Trustee Christian,
Yes.
trustee Reckler,
Reckler, yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you so much. It passes. Now we're gonna move to consent. We are pulling item C11 out of this agenda. Board, are there any other items? Sorry, we're tabling that item. Are there any items that we wanna? We're postponing, yes, C11. Yeah, we're postponing C11 to another meeting. Are there any other items that anyone would like to pull for tonight? Okay. Without any objection, we'll actually approve the rest of the consent items except for C11. So moved. Thank you so much. Okay, now we're gonna move to our communication reports. Tonight, Superintendent Harris does not have a communication because he's gonna talk to us about summer school later on the agenda, but we do have student trustee reports. Dr. Harris, are you introducing it or Trustee Baron? Go ahead. Thank you so much.
All right. Hello, everyone. Daniela will not be able to be here today, so it'll just be me today. So I hope that's all right. But yeah, we're here with another student trustee report, and without further ado, let's begin. Next slide, please. So first, I'm just gonna briefly talk about what ASC has been doing lately. Next slide. So currently in ASC, the student trustee application for the 2023 to 2024 school year was open to current ASC members, including freshmen as of May 11th, as ASC voted on. So it was open to freshmen and basically all high school levels. The application did close yesterday though, and I believe that as of yesterday morning, there were around 3 students signed up. I'm not sure if that number went up, and if that's still the case, but in case we do not have more candidates, we are considering opening it up to non-ASC members in order to fulfill the 4 required roles we need. So yeah, that will have to be discussed and voted in ASC, however, so that will still be discussed. The candidates that have signed up, however, will be giving 2-minute speeches at our next ASC meeting, which is tomorrow. So we're looking forward to hearing from the candidates and getting a sneak peek into what our student trustees next year might look like. So yeah, additionally, we've been progressing in our subcommittees. The subcommittees have been completing research outside of ASC, and hopefully they will have lots of research to report in tomorrow's meeting. Hopefully, depending on what they report on and present, ASC will also be voting on approving their solutions and research that they will bring to us tomorrow. So, for example, I know that the job role and description committee that I'm a part of, we've been completing research on basically solidifying the role and job description of what it is to be an ASC member and a student trustee. And hopefully we'll get to present our findings tomorrow to the rest of the ASC members, and hopefully they'll be able to vote on whether they approve the creative descriptions that we've made. And in completing that process, we're hoping that this will be another step towards finalizing the foundations of ASC for next year. And making sure that they're ready for next year. So that's what ASC has been doing. Next slide, please. Next, I have a brief update about the Pathways project that we are currently working on. Next slide, please. So as of the beginning of May, we had some resources actually reach out to us from the Department of College and Career here in the district. And they told us that they loved our pitch from the last meeting and our last presentation. And they also agreed on how important it was that we strengthen the relationship between middle schools and high schools, and how important it was to bring more awareness to the programs and pathways we already do have, and bringing more awareness of them to the middle school students. So they reached out to us to offer their support and in coming up with ideas and possible next steps. So we're hoping to get in touch with them soon and meet soon to discuss some ideas. Additionally, we're preparing to send out our first survey to hopefully some middle schools by the end of this week. We're finalizing the survey, and again, with these surveys, we're aiming to get information from middle school students to see what they already know about pathways and about college and career readiness, and what gaps may need filling in that case. Yeah, we're hoping to get some information from generally a middle school audience. And hopefully we'll get the survey sent out by the end of this week. And we'll start getting some data by next week. So yeah. Next slide, please. And finally, we're going to move on to just some individual school findings. Next slide, please. So for Richmond High, we have our fashion show coming up, I believe the 2nd of June. That should be our fashion teacher at Richmond High does that, and it's a great show every year. So if I get an invitation for it, I'll be sure to send it out to you guys. But that's coming up. We had our prom back in April on the 28th. That was lots of fun. Our decision day is coming up on the 1st of June, I believe. A local scholarship in the district called the West Contra Costa Retired Ed Scholarship Fund. They 6 students from Richmond High are receiving that scholarship for this year. So that's a great honor for lots of students this year to be receiving. Our Marching Band Disneyland trip is coming up next week. We'll be gone that week, and that will be a very fun trip, and we'll be able to represent our community all the way down in Anaheim along with other high school marching bands that will be performing that day. And our graduation is coming up on the 8th of June. For middle college, I know, I'm not sure, I forget what scholarship specifically is, but 9 students from middle college did receive a Diablo Valley scholarship, a local scholarship there, I believe. So they're very proud to have that honor. Their decision day was on the 5th of earlier this month. Their prom was also on the 6th, I believe. They have grad night coming up next week as well. 5 students from middle college are receiving the retired ed scholarship, and their graduation is this Friday, I believe, for Contra Costa graduates, and then for middle college graduates, it will be the 20th, so this Saturday. Next slide, please. These are some more updates from across the district. So Pinole, they had their senior breakfast on the 12th. They had decision day. They have 4 students that are receiving the retired ed scholarship. They have Pride Week this week from the 16th to 18th, and so that's lots of fun. They had their prom, and their graduation is coming up on the 2nd. El Cerrito had 6 students receiving the retired ed scholarship. Their Spirit Week is also currently happening. They're having a Madera walkthrough for seniors that attended Madera Elementary on June 5th. They had decision day and prom, and their graduation will be the 7th of June. Next slide, please. As for De Anza, they had their prom on May 12th. They also have grad night coming up from the 25th to 28th next week. Their graduation will be the 6th of June, and they have 7 students receiving the retired ed scholarship. Hercules High School, their graduation will be on the 10th of June. They had 4 students this year receiving the retired ed scholarship. They're having a small business fair this Friday, and hopefully they'll be able to give opportunity and spotlight to some of the small businesses that students may have at the school, and they'll get to sell some things to the local community there. They're having their senior breakfast on May 31st, and they had prom on the 13th of this month. As for Kennedy, they have 8 students receiving the retired ed scholarship. Their graduation will be the 10th of June, and they had prom last month on the 28th as well. So that's what the high schools have been doing. We don't have middle school information because we have not been in touch with the middle schools as of lately, but hopefully we'll get some updates from them soon. Next slide. And that concludes the presentation. Pretty short presentation today since Daniela was not here. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or concerns, ask away. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Baron. I mean, what a wonderful presentations. No offense to our wonderful staff, it's my favorite presentations. So let's move to questions. Trustee Reckler, Trustee Christian, any questions? I don't have any either, so thank you so much. Okay, we're now going to move to our action and discussion items board. We do have a lot of items tonight, unfortunately, a lot of timely items. So we're gonna do 3 questions per item, 2-minute comments, okay, for tonight. And we're starting with the third interim. And Dr. McIntyre, I believe this is your item. Pass to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor to be here again this evening to update the board and the community on the financial position of the district. Let me just share the presentation. Tonight, we're talking about the third interim report. The third interim report is a bit unique in that it is only required if the second interim report has a qualified or negative certification, either by the district or by the county. And during the second interim report, we on March 15th, there were some agenda items that were tied to the assumptions that were in the report. And so the board self-certified at my suggestion as qualified. In hindsight, the county agreed with that self-certification. It did not amend it when they reviewed the second interim report. So tonight we're presenting the third interim report. Here on this slide, you see kind of the normal budget cycle for us. When we reviewed the second interim report, we were looking at real year-to-date data, live data through January 31st of this year. And then we were projecting forward the rest of this fiscal year and the 2 subsequent years. Now tonight, in the third interim report, we're using real live data through the end of April. So very, very recent data. And we're only projecting the last, 2 months of school, really month of school, and then 2 subsequent years. So I would expect what you're seeing here for expenditures to come in very closely to what you'll see for the estimated actuals when we do the adopted budget in just 3 short weeks. This is going to be very incremental presentation in that we're showing you kind of where we were at first and second interim and where we are now, so you can see the adjustments over time. Here on this slide, you're looking at the revisions for the third interim. So you see on the left-hand side, we're looking at the total general fund. The first section is revenues. The second section is expenditures. And the last section is fund balance. You can see across the top, we have the original adopted budget in the second column, the first interim update in the third column, the second interim from March 15th in the fourth column, and then third interim is tonight in the last column on the right. Interestingly, you'll see there were some minor changes between the enrollment assumptions that we were using, but from the adopted budget, there was minor changes from adopted to first, and then again at second interim. We believe the second interim was very close, and so we're holding constant on those that ADA assumption. Also, the frequency with which students are in their seats have been adjusted. And we've had some conversation around how the statewide trend has really come down a lot, from 93.5% to 95.5% on average, depending on the school district type, down to about 90.5%. And we're at 90.6%. So we're with everybody else, and that's not necessarily a source of celebration, because that means our students are missing 10% of the year. That's 18 school days. And so if we could change one thing today, for me, it would be the students spending a higher proportion of their school year in their seats with their teacher. In the next section, you see revenues. The revenues from second interim to now, no changes for the LCFF, federal or other state revenue sources. Very, very minor change of just shy of $100,000 in the other local revenue. So very minor changes there. On the expense side, however, what we see is we do have an increase in certificated classified salaries and employee benefits. The vast majority of this came in in updating. We're monitoring special ed expenditures. We're seeing an uptick in these expenditures. Now, there are minor offsets in this other services. So we hope, as we're digging in and we're doing the analysis at the end of the year, we're hoping that we're seeing more of those people we were contracting out becoming hires. And that'll be the conversation when we're doing the post-mortem for the year in September. But for now, we did see an uptick. And an uptick in special ed means an increased contribution from the unrestricted general fund to the restricted general fund. This does not mean the special ed team did anything wrong or bad. Please remember that the federal government and the state government does not fully fund special education. So when we're meeting the needs of those students and it costs us a little more, we have to absorb the difference. So as a result of the total expenditures being slightly less than they were at third interim, you see the fund balance going up just a little bit here. Now, when you look at that fund balance number, it's massive. I mean, we just have to call it for what it is. But it's important to recognize that the three different sources of funds we're talking about tonight. On the far right-hand column, you have the restricted general fund funds. This is where the vast majority of our fund balance is. So you see, you got that arts, music, and instructional materials discretionary block grant. You got that learning recovery emergency block grant. And we've got other restricted balances, which include special education and routine restricted maintenance and a plethora of other programs, including ESSER 3. Sitting out there. And so we've got $75.9 million in these restricted dollars that can only be used for a limited set of purposes. On the unrestricted general fund side, this is where the board has full and complete discretion on the use of these funds. We have $25.3 million, but of that, $15 million is a required set aside by the state of California in the name of fiscal solvency. So what we really have is $300,000 in non-spendable supplies, mostly supplies in our offices and our closets. Think Post-it notes, printer, paper, copier, toner, things like that. And then we've got $9.9 million unassigned. And thank goodness we have that unassigned balance and the Fund 17, $35 million reserve for economic uncertainty, because we need those for our 2 projection years and in order to keep the county out of our day-to-day business. And we're going to show you what that looks like on the multi-year. But as we talk about the multi-year, probably one of the most important things is the assumptions that feed into the multi-year, because I can make massive changes to the fund balance by changing the assumptions. And so we do want to recognize that we're showing a very modest decline in enrollment. This is not continuing the same pace we've seen the last 3 years. This is a much more modest estimate of declining enrollment, because we do believe that we've seen most of the students who need to leave because their families are leaving the area do so. And I know we're also working very hard on giving families programmatic reasons to stay. Additionally, we did update the out year ADA percentage. We're assuming that it's going to stay constant for now because we've seen a shift in the industry. But once again, if we were going to focus our attention, I would suggest it be on that daily attendance initiatives. We also have to look at the 3-year. You see UPP here. I know I just gave you an acronym in a slide. That is the unduplicated pupil percentage. That is the proportion of students who are either qualify for free and reduced lunch, foster youth, or English language learners. So I do apologize, in the name of space, we used an acronym. Additionally, the COLAs in the out years, you see we have the COLA with the augmentation this year. We're still using the COLA published by the Department of Finance of 8.13% for next year. While we were waiting for the meeting to start, I did the math at 8.22%, which is the new COLA from the governor's May revision. The difference for us would be $282,000. I'll take it, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't save the day. So because of the timing of publishing this agenda and this material, we use the 8.13%. We're still using the 3.54% in the out years. The big change you see in the material tonight is the PERS rate for next year has actually gone down 0.32%. So we were at 27% and we've been able to lower that out year PERS rate. So that's really the big change in the assumptions that are being used in the multi-year projection. So tonight, I'm really going to spend most of the time focusing on what's in the unrestricted general fund. And the reason I'm doing that is because when the county reviewed the second interim report, they spent a lot of time reviewing the notes and talking through with staff here at the district, what was the impact of those 2 resolutions that were not approved. So we had brought 3 reduction in force resolutions for the board's consideration, and one of them passed and the other 2 didn't. The 2 that didn't total about $3.8 million in cost. And so the county was very, very interested in how we were going to absorb that cost. And so I'm going to go through that in the next couple slides here. But the reason I start with the kind of impact on the multi-year projection for the unrestricted general fund is in preparation for what's coming with the adopted budget, the work that has to be done for the adopted budget. Because while the county said in the third interim report, make sure you tell us what you do with that $3.8 million, they also said, hey, and while you're working on the adopted budget, we want to see the unrestricted general fund operationally neutral or positive for 23-24. So when we look through the numbers with the increased contribution to special education this year, that tends to carry forward from year to year. You don't see a spike in one year and then a massive drop the next year, typically, unless you have a group of high-cost students who leave our system, they graduate. And so what we see is operationally, This year, we thought we were gonna have a positive cash flow of just shy of 8 million. Now we're closer to 4.2 million in the current year. And that, of course, affects the ending fund balance for the year. Next year, when we look forward with that increase in contribution to restricted programs, we see we're going to need to transfer in $5.1 million from Fund 17. Keep in mind, this is a year earlier than we had originally planned to make a Fund 17 transfer. And we'll still have an operational deficit of $9.3 million, projecting forward everything we know today. So that means our team, along with the input and materials we've received from the contract committee, will be recognizing every piece of savings we can to make all the cuts we can, because we have to bring that $9.3 million number to zero. And we need to bring that $5 million transfer from Fund 17 to zero. So if you add those two numbers together, we need to cut $14.4 million between now and the adopted budget 3 weeks from now, where we'll hear the draft of that for the public hearing. Looking forward, you might recall we originally thought we were going to have to make a cut of about 19.8 million from the unrestricted general fund or from operations in order to avoid a transfer from Fund 17 for year 24-25. The increase in special ed costs had to be added to that. And so if we're looking at the plan the county has for us, what they'd like to see us do is we'd make our $14.4 million cut for next year, and that would only leave $8.1 million of additional cuts for 24-25. So that's the goal today, as outlined by the county, what they want to see from us in the adopted budget. So I wanted to use this transition from second into third interim to also set up what's coming in 3 weeks. The county also wanted us to very publicly discuss that $3.8 million. I do apologize. We had a couple, you're going to see a couple cells in red on this sheet and an additional column on this particular slide, because we had several of these slides were Google Sheets, where formulas and numbers had been updated, but it didn't pull into the report. So where there's number changes, they're in red. So full disclosure, that had to do with the fact that we had a linked, Google Sheets is what we use, but we had a linked formula in there. And so we apologize for the error posted there. So what you see, for example, on the left-hand side is the positions that we had proposed for RIF in the two resolutions on March 15th that were not approved by the board. The next column, we have the number of FTEs. On the left side, if positions are vacant, we say so. And we think that's important, because while the board didn't RIF the positions, we can still have a conversation about, if they've been vacant for a while, can we live with them being vacant a little while longer and realize some savings? Now the conversation changes dramatically depending on where those positions live. If they live at a school site versus in a central office, obviously a very different conversation. So we see, for example, the academic support providers, that's 2.8 FTEs spread over 3 positions that are all currently vacant. It was funded this year in Title I, and the plan is to continue funding the $207,523 in Title I next year. As you go down and look at each of the different positions, for example, the bilingual paraprofessionals, we have 5 FTEs, 2 of which are vacant. They're currently being funded through both donation funds and Title III EL funds. Those are going to have to move into the LCAP next year. Similarly, we have a coordinator of business services position that's open. This is Sungja Cha's old position when she was doing the finances for the bond program and for routine restricted maintenance. And that position has been open since she left, and we are struggling mightily. And the facilities team has performed like heroes to try to keep the public facing in front of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee and keep those groups in line, given how shorthanded they've been. I do have some plans. Some suggestions I'd like to bring back, hopefully with Mr. Freeze, on how to deal with that, but we're not dealing with that tonight, but I did want to acknowledge a major impact. We also had, for example, some what we consider to be right sizing in food services. Fortunately, food services, they're in their own fund and they have a good cash balance. So while it was good operationally to make the change, that change isn't necessarily hurting our bottom line quite the same way some of the other changes are. So here you can see all of the positions, they're included there. And that's the total of the $3.8 million that was not approved. So you can see where they're funded this year, where we're planning to fund them next year. The numbers on the very right column are the correct current estimates. So we took a big picture. we took a smaller picture, an even smaller picture, and now we're taking a step back out. Again, and just looking at the multi-year, when we look at our revenues versus total expenditures, over time, those revenues, we had to add in Fund 17 in 23-24 and 24-25 to meet our cash needs in the unrestricted general fund side of the budget. If you look down toward the bottom in components of ending fund balance, subletter F, unassigned, unappropriated, there's that $9.9 million that we said was discretionary, and thank goodness we had it. Right below it is the amount that we expect to end the year in Fund 17. So this year, it looks like we end pretty well. But when we look forward, we see next year, the unrestricted, unappropriated balance goes down to about $8,000 it's about $8,000. And the Fund 17 goes down to about 29.9 million. You got one more year. We're just a little better off, about 64,000 in the unappropriated amount in the unrestricted general fund. But Fund 17 is now down to $7.4 million. So the real goal as we look forward here is to make the cuts that we need to make so we don't need to burn through Fund 17 at the rate we're currently projecting. That of course preserves the long-term fiscal solvency of the district if we're able to make those adjustments. But as it sits with everything we have today, while we meet the technical definition of a positive budget in collaboration with the county, we believe because so many cuts are assumed and so much cash, the high volume of structural deficit requiring such massive transfers from Fund 17 are in the current plan, we are recommending a self-certification of a qualified budget for the third interim. And with that, I did want to let the board know that we will be attending a workshop to hear the governor's May revise, what it means for education from School Services of California on Friday, and that we will be bringing back the adopted budget, the draft of the budget, and the LCAP June 7th for a public hearing, and hopefully to be adopted, both of which on June 14th. But before we go to that, and before there's questions from the board, our fiscal advisor, Javetta Cleveland, is also in attendance and requested if she could share some wisdom with us.
Absolutely. Good evening, Ms. Cleveland. Thank you for being here. Oh, sorry, 1 second. If you can click on the button that has a little face on it. There you go. You're good.
Okay. Good evening, Board President Gonzalez Hoy, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Hurst, community and staff. I'm here as the fiscal advisor. Dr. McIntyre just presented the third interim report. And I just want to highlight a few things that I understand and make sure everyone understands about the presentation that he just made. I also would like to continue to encourage the board to implement the fiscal solvency plan. I know it's tough to make budget reductions. I've been there many times. It's very tough, especially when those reductions are related to people or reduction in force. The multi-year projections include a significant structural deficit that's being supported by special one-time reserves. Just to kind of summarize it really clearly, the district's deficit spending is $9.3 million for the 23-24 school year. And that's after a transfer of $5.1 million from the special reserve fund. So when you look at that, really the deficit is $14 million for next school year. Also the following year in the multi-year projection, that increases, that deficit, structural deficit increases from 14.4 million to 22.5 million. So these are significant numbers. I will still say I've been there before, and it is, there is possibilities. There is an opportunity to be able to manage a budget reduction of that magnitude. It just has to be done. You have to chip away at it. You have to make very tough decisions. The sooner the reductions are made, the better. The impact, because budget deficits compound over time. So the sooner you make budget reductions, even if it is just 3.8 million of the total, the sooner you make that, the better it helps over time. The county office's most recent letter dated May 12th states that the district is no longer a going concern. The letter also acknowledges that the board has established a budget contract review work group. I just want to say that that's a very positive thing to be doing. Looking at contracts, looking for ways to save. It's an extremely positive step, as well as I understand the school sites have been doing the same thing. So everybody's looking where are the possible reductions that can be made. However, I caution the district, even though contracts do have a large opportunity for budget reductions, I caution the district due to experience that the district won't just be able to cut contracts alone. It's going to take some staffing. The budget is 80% plus in total staffing represents the budget. Over 80% of the budget represents staffing. So with the significant amount of budget reductions required, just cutting contracts alone won't do the trick. So there's more work that needs to be done in the budget. The letter from the county also requests an alternative budget reductions being made because of the resolutions that were not approved by the board on March 15th. And I think Dr. McIntyre addressed some of that, but you definitely don't want to kick the can down the road, especially when you're using one-time funds for ongoing staffing. So I caution, looking for one-time savings, it helps. But what we're really looking at is ongoing budget reductions. And unfortunately, most likely that will definitely include a reduction in force as we go forward. The county letter mentions that the board needs to adopt a balanced budget, as Dr. McIntyre mentioned, and that is a huge amount to balance in terms of the $9 million in deficit spending with the transfer from the Fund 17. I've reviewed the budget assumptions. I reviewed this budget, and what it represents, the third interim, it represents the district's financial position. So it's giving the board, the community, and everyone, this is where we are, this is where we stand. And so I'm gonna continue to encourage the district to continue to work hard towards those budget reductions, and make some of the tough decisions, because when you have a deficit budget hanging over, it's hard to focus on what everyone wants to focus on, which is educating the students of the Contra Costa County. And so that's my presentation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cleveland, and thank you, Dr. McIntyre. Board, we're now going to move to questions. Good evening, Trustee Phillips. Just a reminder, we're doing 3 questions this round, 2-minute comments. But if there are additional questions just for this item, we'll of course do another round. So we'll start, if anyone has questions, so anyone would like to get us started? Trustee Reckler, go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you, Ms. Cleveland, for being here. First, we have limited levers on income generation and its attendance, enrollment, and the unduplicated count. So can someone describe again where we are versus plan, and then what are the strategies and steps going forward, both locally and then with the state, to solve or shore up attendance, enrollment, and unduplicated count? We're not alone in this. We have responsibility, but I feel this is a shared issue across the state. So curious on that.
Well, I'm certainly going to invite my colleagues to jump in on the conversation around attendance. And I thank you for pointing it out. We look at the rate with which students are in their seats. Students are missing nearly 10% of the year. And we know historically when students miss 3 days, it has a massive impact on their outcomes. When they miss 5 or 6 days, we call them truant. And it's a big deal for a reason, because we know the average student isn't going to get a year worth of learning when they've missed that many days. We're way beyond that. We're 2-3 times beyond that as an industry. There are districts this last year who invested significant resources with various different approaches to try to increase that ADA percentage successfully. There's certainly a conversation around finding out what people have done that has yielded the higher results, and at a minimum copying. But the best thing we can do for our students and our budget is to get those students in the seat more days. I mean, it's a win-win-win all the way around. Because as you said, we can't just sell another widget to make more revenue. There were, so I don't know if anybody wants to talk about initiatives that we have going on. I'm not super well informed in that particular area, and I apologize for that. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus.
I know that Larisha is on. Larisha, you want to add to the conversation?
Hi, Trustee Reckler. We've talked about attendance before and some of the things that we've done. One is when I first started, we added 2 of positions that were vacant, which were the truancy officers who support with SARBs and SARTs at the district level. We also just recently hired a coordinator to actually oversee A2A because part of A2A, it's not A2A the tool, but the A2A is about closing the conferences and checking and ensuring that we're actually looking at notes around what we're doing to support students. So part of the work of our new coordinator, Angelica, is actually supporting schools with meeting with parents, setting up attendance teams, looking at the notes in their conferences and supporting them with closing conferences and really looking at students who are chronically absent, looking at the trends as to why they're chronically absent. Is it because they don't have a bus pass? Is it other transportation needs? Is it that they're watching younger siblings? So there's a variety of reasons that come up. And we've presented before. I can definitely have LaShante again send the information on everything that the attendance department is doing. But those are some of the strategies that we've been doing, which is really just supporting with SARBs and SARTs, really supporting with attendance teams at school sites, really going to schools to actually support our secretaries with attendance monitoring, and then really having them look at A2A. So last year, we actually did a lot of reports at principal meetings around A2A and the data that we were seeing and having people look at their data and talk through their conferences. We have tons of conferences right now that are not being closed. So that was one of the strategies, was really working on how to actually ensure we're having these conversations with parents, because the best support is actually the school calling the families and saying, why are you not coming to school? What's going on at home? How can we best support you? So our job at Central really was to support them with those strategies. So that's still in place, and the staff is still there to do that work. And so they're going to continue with that work as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And then if I could just get a quick follow-up, is there any statewide action that anybody knows about?
None that I've heard yet. I am hoping that when we hear the governor's may revise, I'm hoping there'll be something in there, but I've not, in the reading that I've done on what's in there, I have not come across anything substantial.
Yeah, me either. Okay, moving on. All right, so that's how we get income. Next is obviously expenditures, and special ed, is the big ticket item. So are there any strategies? Once again, this is no fault of the people in the department, but are there strategies? Is there is there any pickup there? Is there any, would someone be able to expand on that?
I'll start while Miss Sonia Neely Johnson is getting her is endeavoring to get her microphone to work. Oh, there we go.
Good evening, board president and trustees and community. So Trustee Reckler specifically, I want to say that there is a level of advocating that is right now happening at the state, because as Dr. McIntyre said earlier, we are not fully funded. So one of the strategies that we're just doing internally is really working closely with HR to recruit more paraprofessionals, because that's where a big cost is happening right now, because we're down about 200 to 250. And actually that's kind of an average for the year, but we're really working to be creative in terms of how we're doing some of that recruitment. And so some of the things that we talked about in our department was actually looking at doing some tables and recruitment at some of our community colleges. For sure, one of my directors who is here, Guthrie Fleischman, he had a great idea about talking to some of our students that are graduating this year, what they're going to be doing next year, if they're going to college locally, or even looking for part-time jobs or full-time jobs, doing a level of recruitment there. But as you know, there is a shortage across the state. And so if we can reduce the contracts, that will help with some of those costs. But right now we do have a shortage. And then specifically for teachers, you know, we just hired 27 teachers on the J1, and instead of hiring them on, you know, for the 3 years, we have them for 6 years. So we're hoping that some of the teachers that left, we had 40 that left, that they will be coming back because it will be 3 years. So I'm just really looking at any way that we can do a level of recruitment and continuing to try to grow our own, if you will. But I really like the idea of just really looking locally, and also putting flyers at our schools and in our classrooms, and also having our leaders, specifically our teachers and our administrators, actually also doing recruiting, because we do have a lot of paraprofessionals that are from the community.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, can I understand the timing of what's coming forward for LCAP and next year's budget?
Absolutely. So in order for the board to consider adopting the LCAP and then the budget, there must be a public hearing first. And so presently the public hearing is scheduled for June 7th, and the adoption is scheduled for June 14th. Now, I do want to make sure the board is aware this creates a somewhat unique situation in that the materials for June 14th are due before the June 7th board meeting. And so what does that mean from a governance perspective? It means that the staff will absolutely take direction. And so we'll do the public hearing. And if the board provides direction to staff, we'd like to see you do X, Y, or Z, staff will, but they will not be able to do it in time for the adoption on June 14th. So staff would be asking the board to adopt with direction. So we'll accept it as is, but please bring back to the next meeting or within the next 30 days with these changes, so we can readopt. That way we meet all of our statutory deadlines and continue hopefully under self-determination.
Okay, thank you. I definitely have a comment.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. Anyone else have questions from the board? Okay, let's move to comments then. Is there a motion? Sorry, thank you for the reminder. Oh, I'm sorry. I realized I did not call for public comment. First, why don't we see if there's any public comment, and then after that, we'll do a motion and comments. Staff, is there any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
Thank you so much. Okay, sorry about that. Let's move to a motion. Does anyone have a motion? Trustee Reckler?
I'll go ahead and move a motion to approve as qualified the 22-23. No, sorry. Right, no.
It'd be
The
approve this,
2023 third interim. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't even know what year I'm in anymore.
yeah, wrong year.
As qualified.
Thank you so much. I'll second that. Okay, let's move to comments. Board, remember, we have 2 minutes. So if Ms. Cornejo, if you wouldn't mind putting up the clock. Thank you so much. Anyone would like to get a start on comments? We'll start with Trustee Phillips, and then we'll move ourselves this way.
Thank you. So, one, I want to start by saying I appreciate the presentation. and additionally, the information provided by our fiscal advisor. I must say that I am conflicted, and I think that's the best word to describe my feelings. I've been asking for a balanced budget since I arrived on the board 6 years ago. When Dr. Hurst got here, I was like, balance the budget. But I had an idea in my mind of what that looked like. I believe personally that we have limited funds in the district. But for me, what that means is that cuts have to be shared. And that cuts have to be shared between staff and kids. I look at the monies as if there were two pots. There's an adult pot and there's a kid pot. And I feel like what has happened is that the kid pot has been raided. And now we're being asked to balance the budget by taking even more out of the kid pot. And I don't think that that's fair. That doesn't mean that I don't understand that we need to balance the budget. But it means that my idea of what a balanced budget looked like, which was shared sacrifice between children and adults, that's not what is happening. And so that is what's leading to my internal conflict about how to deal with this. Because I don't think that the monies that we do have been allocated fairly and that they're being allocated fairly in this cutting process.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Trustee Reckler, we'll move to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Ms. Cleveland, for being here and reinforcing some key points. So the first one is attendance and enrollment and processes around UPP collection are critical. And so I'm wondering for summer, the summertime period, research-based, like what could happen over the summer to get kids in maybe and, start to do that reinforcement. I think it's also really important to reach out to the state and press our case. We have a lobbyist. We are not alone. If we were alone, it would be a different thing, but we're not alone. This is a statewide issue. And, we're talking about money, but really in my heart, it's about academic achievement and having a good life. And we know that if kids miss school, it limits so many opportunities and limits good, successful lives. So I'm really concerned about, we're talking about finances, but it is not about finances. It's about future growth and development and leading good lives. I do recommend a deep dive into special ed and a lot of attention put on that. It's the biggest nugget. It's the biggest nugget in the whole budget. So that needs to be a priority. And then I want to comment on the timing. Handing in the 14th before the 7th, and I will not be here on the 7th, maybe for this conversation. That's a real struggle. Just to be able to give direction and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if that calendar could get looked at and manipulated in some way so that the second meeting is moved out or something like that. But a lot of people are going to have questions. I'm going to have questions. I'm not going to be here from, much of the 7th. So I think there needs to be some thought put around that. And then also, contracts are not going to be enough. There's going to have to be a deep discussion about staffing. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. Are there comments on this side? Sorry, the public can't see. Trustee Christian, Trustee Clerk Smith Folds, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I apologize for showing up late. I had an event with my senior at her high school. I was able to listen to some of the questions on the way in. So my comment is a simple one. When we do the work, we can have the hard conversation, but we have to do the work. We have started that work with the Budget and Contract Committee. We need to continue that work. And so we can have this hard conversation about reduction in force when it's time. We have to do the work and we have to continue to do the work. And we've started that, President Gonzalez-Hoy and Superintendent Hurst, thank you for your leadership. We started that in the contract in the budget committee. We started establishing transparency because we're going through the 4,000s and the 5,000s, and we're having those deep conversations. I want to caution the board that we don't and cannot not fund special ed. Those are our most marginalized students. So we have to be very careful and diligent when we're talking about just one group of students. It is very vital that we have the experts in the room when we have that conversation, because our primary duty is to protect our students. And we do that by making sure that those most marginalized students are protected and covered. And the federal government and the state has never funded special ed fully, never. So we need to make sure that those, and we have to be clear, our special ed babies are our mainstreamed babies. They are our general education babies. They are not different. They are the same. So if we're in a district of inclusion and diversity, we look at them as one. So we make sure that we keep the cuts away from the children, and we do that by having the deep dive conversations. Thank you, board. I am complete.
Thank you, Clerk Smith Folds. For my comments, sorry, I'll wait for the. Thank you so much. For my comments, first of all, thank you, Ms. Cleveland, Dr. McIntyre, of course. I wanted to appreciate the county because you are giving us a little more time for our committee to do the work necessary with our stakeholders. I will share with the rest of the board that it has not been easy. We've met, I think, 6 times, almost full day most of the time. So we are putting in the time, definitely with our labor partners and community who are showing up. Unfortunately, we've looked at $55 million of services and contracts so far, and I think we've cut, I think, close to $1 million. So we're not finding the cuts that we need to find. We might have to dig even deeper. But I think to the point of earlier, all these funds are being used for something, right? They're not just sitting somewhere. They're all used for something that is being directly, they're supporting teachers or staff or students, right? So we have to keep that in mind, which is why it has been so hard to find savings, because every contract is one less service for a student. So we have been very thoughtful of those cuts, but we're not close to the deficit that we need to cut, right? So we're gonna have to dig deeper. The contract committee is gonna have to continue to do that work. We're not gonna find the 9 million. I don't believe. I've shared this in the committee. So it is going to require more work for us to do and hard decisions, which we'll have to make to have a balanced budget. But we have to do that work first. So I'm proud that we are doing that. I will say that unfortunately, Trustee Reckler, we're not able to move the meetings. We did look and tried, and there's something happening every day in June. So we got a lot of pushback when we try to change it. But because between graduations and the celebrations, we cannot find a date. So we'll have to figure out how to provide feedback for the people who will be missing the 7th, but we'll figure that out. And thank you, staff, for this. So we'll move to our vote. And again, the resolution is to approve the 3rd interim with a qualified budget. So we'll start with Trustee Baron.
Baron, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Clerk Smith Folds.
Smith Folds, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Christian.
Yes.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler.
Reckler, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips.
Yes.
And myself say yes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move now to the next item, which is E2. I'm not gonna read the title, Mr. Free, so I'll pass it to you. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, board. Tonight, we're bringing before the board, we're asking the board to hold a public meeting for the Maintenance and Recreation Assessment District for the fiscal year of 23-24. Staff is present for any questions that may be had. So if you could open the public comment, public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Freeze. So I open the public hearing. Is there any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
Thank you. I will now close the hearing. Board will move to questions. Thank you, Mr. Freeze, by the way. Board, are there any questions on this item? I see none. Is there a motion? Okay, in the interest of time, I'll make the motion. I move resolution number 2223-79 approving the engineer's report.
Smith Folds seconds.
Thank you so much. Board, are there any comments? Oh, okay, we're gonna move directly to the vote. Trustee Varón.
Baron, yes.
Thank you. Trustee Clerk Smith Folds.
Smith Folds, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Christian.
Christian, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler.
Reckler, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips.
Yes.
Thank you, and I'm a yes. Thank you so much. Okay, now we're moving to E3, allocation of Measure R planning budget for Richmond High School. Mr. Freeze, is your item as well?
Yes, it is. If you just give me a second to pull it up.
No problem, thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay. Tonight, we're talking about Richmond High and the Richmond High modernization project. And tonight, we're actually asking the board to recommend allocating a $1 million budget for the planning for the Richmond High modernization. The approval of the planning budget will fund the site-specific master planning and site investigation for the project. The district went through an architectural selection process through an RFQ process where we had 12 firms that had solicited. We went through an RFQ process where we narrowed down that selection to 6 firms. And then those 6 firms, based upon their qualifications, move forward to a selection committee based with site personnel. So we had the principal, we had community members, we had students on that board, and the recommendation was to move forward with HKIT. I'm sorry, DLR Architects for the Richmond High project. So the pre-design services will include the program coordination, the evaluation of the existing conditions in the master plan, scoping options. We will be bringing back, once the scoping is completed and the budgets are developed, we'll be bringing back in the fall to you recommendations to create the project budget and scope for the Richmond High project. And at that time, once awarded, we'll move into the complete design, amend the contract for the architectural services for the architect, and move forward with the project. So our recommendation tonight is to allocate $1 million to fund the site investigation work for Richmond High and to fund the architectural services for DLR Group at $304,500 as we move forward with major R projects.
Thank you, Mr. Freeze. I think that you were showing the previous resolution on the screen, by the way.
Oh, I thought I had the other one up. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. You did well. So staff, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we have Mr. Jose De Leon.
Good evening, board members. Good evening, Dr. Hurst. The students were very excited today when I was talking to them about what are the next steps in the modernization of Richmond High School. They were very happy that their voice was heard in the selection of the company that was going to do the work. Also, some of the members from the community that I talked to were also excited about the work moving forward. So more than anything else, we want to make sure that the work does move forward in a speedy way so we can start seeing some changes for our community. So thank you very much for the presentations and setting up this process. And we're excited to see the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Leon. There's one more public comment on Zoom.
Mr. Don Gosney, please unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, if we could put up there you go. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, is this clock supposed to start when I start speaking, or I've already lost 5 seconds just watching the clock?
But hold on a second, Mr. Gosney. We'll restart your clock.
Thank you. I have concerns about proceeding with Kennedy High School and Richmond High School. Not that they don't need work, but you've got members of that community. You've got employees that talk to me. You've got students that talk to me. They think they're going to get a total rebuild of this school because the district is not making it crystal clear to these people that we don't have the money for a total rebuild. And so, I'm also concerned that the outreach to the community was extremely limited. It really wasn't the community as in the whole. It was like the staff members, it was the students that will not be there when it gets rebuilt. It was the parents of the current students. As I pointed out to you, that this process will take so long. The students that will be attending the new school are in the 2nd grade right now. That's an awful long time because it's going to take 6 or 7 years between the planning and getting all the approvals, selling the bonds, doing the actual construction, and of course the inevitable lawsuits that will be filed by. That's what stopped 2 of the previous high schools that we had. But also my concern is if we proceed with Kennedy High School and Richmond High School, as it looks like we are going to do, it means that we're not going to have the funds for any of the other schools. Not really. You've got Steege Elementary School, which used to be next on the list. That's the oldest school in our district. It's falling apart. Black mold, lead-based paint, asbestos from floor to ceiling, holes all over the school. And it means that in our lifetime, the Black and brown kids at Steege Elementary School will not get a replacement school because we're spending the money on Kennedy High School and Richmond High School, which needs repairs, but not necessarily total replacement. Thank you. I'll be back when you talk about Kennedy.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we're gonna move to questions. We'll start with Trustee Phillips.
I'm getting old. I'm not going to say what they saw me doing. I'm just going to let them laugh about it. I have one question. Are the kids at Kennedy and Richmond High Black and brown too?
Yes.
That's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Anyone else have questions? Trustee Reckler?
I do. Thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, so just so that I'm clear, this is a continuation of work from October 11th, 2022, when we had the special meeting. Is that correct?
This is the continuation of the work from 2022 October presentation. Yes.
Okay, so now at that time, we said that we were going to go back. We realized that there was not enough money and we were going to go back and re-engage architects and re-scope and re-budget for each campus, adjust the scope of the critical needs project for Steege Elementary, evaluate district-wide initiatives such as safety, HVAC technology, and bring back the needs and recommendations, and then bring back a project scope. So sorry about that. I just want to make sure this is addressed this. And then my question is, there are no funds available at this moment to start that. Is that correct?
There are no funds without allocating a budget for Richmond High and Kennedy, correct?
Okay, so we have to do this to work on the finish of this October 11th.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. Okay, I see no more question. Go ahead, Clerk Smith-Folds.
Mr. Freeze, could you run us through a timeline? So we do this tonight, if this passes tonight, correct? And then what's the timeline for the next steps? It broadly, it didn't have to be truncated, but broad timeline.
So our initial plan is to bring this back in the fall, more like probably October. We had plans to try to get it in earlier, but because of the community meetings with the site, with summer coming upon us, some of that is being very much compressed and we don't want to rush through this. So it will be the fall when we come back with a recommendation and the budget.
Thank you. So in between now and the fall, you're going to have more community meetings, correct? And then you're going to come back in the fall. Is that accurate?
That is correct. In the same period of time, we'll be doing the site assessments as well.
Thank you so much. Dr. Hurst, do you have or have you had conversations with staff about ensuring more community involvement, looking at past community involvement and making sure that you're not only including the current students, but looking at our feeder schools and reaching out and including those parents and community members also?
Yes, we have had those conversations. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, President Gonzalez-Hoy. Those are my three. I'm complete.
Thank you, Clerk Smith Folds. Trustee Phillips, do you want to reclaim your other two questions?
No, I was just gonna make a motion.
Oh, okay, wonderful, perfect. Please go ahead.
I move that the board approve item E3, which is allocate the measure R 2020 planning budget and award the architectural contract for Richmond High School modernization project.
Thank you. I'll second that. So let's move to comments. Let's put up the clock, please. We'll start with you, Trustee Phillips. Thank you.
Richmond, there we go. Richmond High School has quietly undergone a transformation. And I say quietly because it does not get the attention, the positive attention anyway, that a lot of the other schools get. And when it has a negative incident, those incidents tend to be magnified, including in the media. But it's not the same school that it was 10 years ago. It's not the same school that it was 20 years ago. It's definitely not the same school that it was when I was a teen. It has had a quiet transformation, and that transformation is very much positive. It does have issues that need to be addressed still. Dr. Hurst, Principal De Leon, the climate issues in particular in regards to Black children have been an ongoing problem for years. And it needs to be addressed, not just when an incident arises, but truly addressed. But that does not mean that the school does not deserve to be rebuilt for the children who are there and for the children who will be there and for the surrounding community. That school is much more than people give it credit for. So I hope the board passes this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Trustee Reckler?
Thank you very much. And this is just a comment to be real and to remind everybody where we are. And that is that on the low end of the scale, the last projections that came back were $760 million. And the high projection that came back was $925 million for both schools. Measure R was $575 million, the most that has ever been done in a bond, minus $6 million. So we're probably sitting on about $569 million right now. That projection, when it came forward, was months old and probably didn't include the full spike of inflation. So people have to be very realistic with what may come back in October. And I just want to be really clear about that. There's also painting, huge HVAC project, safety upgrades, buzzers, bells, tech needs, Stage, Highland, playgrounds. We got a letter from Collins. So I'm just being realistic that there's a lot of projects and not a lot of money. And then finally, I want to come back to floating another bond, and realistically, it would probably take 10 years to pass another one, because that's when the tax rate would stay stable where it is now, which people, complain about constantly. We can try for sure, but I'm very not positive that it might not, that, we'd have success there. So we really have to think about this for 10 years. And so I'm sorry to be the realist and the Debbie Downer, but I think it's just important just to remind everybody where we left in October. And with that, I'm complete. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Reckler. Any comments on this? No? Okay. Oh, yes. Oh, trustee Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna, add to for Kennedy and Richmond High, these schools, deserve to our students deserve, everybody deserve a nice school. And I used to be a student at Kennedy at once upon a time, and Kennedy was a magnet school. Kennedy did a lot of great things in the community. And so I don't know what happened, but change needs, to take place there. It's, just like the other schools in this district. That's it.
Thank you, trustee Christian. Clerk Smith Folds. Just hold on 1 second. Let's restart her time. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
One of the issues for me is I want to make sure that we are being inclusive with the community when we're having these conversations. That's very important to me, that we are transparent, honest, and inclusive when we have these conversations. The other thing that's very important to me is to realize that all things work together. So if you want to increase your enrollment, nobody wants to come to a school that's falling apart. If you want to increase your attendance, no student wants to come to a classroom without windows. If you want to increase your love of student achievement, then you have to value where the students are for 180 days for 4 years when we're talking about high school. 180 days every year for 4 years. We need to have honest conversations, but we also need to make sure that as we have these honest conversations, we need to center the work and center the honesty and the transparency that I think we're on the right track with. We need to involve the entire community when we're having these conversations, but we don't need to cut corners. We need to go straight at it. And we do that by being completely and 100% honest. I'm complete.
Thank you, Clerk Smith Folds. Okay, for my comments, I mean, I agree with what everybody has said. I also think that we got to be realistic. What we have in Measure R is it's not enough to do full rebuilds of both schools, but we have been doing some rebuilding of both schools, right? Richmond High School has the new gym, right? Kennedy High School has the new field, right? So some work has been done. I think for me, it's critical that we put the Measure R money into these two high schools, because when we talk about equity, we'll talk about equity, right? Our community talks about equity. Every high school has been rebuilt except for these two schools, right? And every high school touches students that go through our elementary schools. We have a lot of elementary schools to rebuild, but if we think about equity, every high school should be rebuilt first, and then we can continue to talk about the elementaries. Of course, Siege should be rebuilt. So if we have the space, I think that we should invest in Siege as well, because they are our oldest school. But this makes sense to me, right? And we made a lot of promises when we were trying to pass Measure R that Richmond High and Kennedy would be rebuilt. Now, I do agree, though, we have to be transparent with our community as we move forward with our community sessions. We just have to be transparent with them, because I think that most people I talk to understand that between the increase of expensive materials and labor because of inflation, $1 does not take us as far as it used to, right? Today, the answer would have cost probably 3 times what it cost us back when we rebuild it. So we have to do whatever we can, though, for these two schools, because I agree, if we really care about Black and Brown students, if we really care about increasing our enrollment, we have to rebuild those two schools, right? And give them the same opportunity that kids at the Ansa and Cerrito High and Pinole High get, right? Which is a beautiful school when they enter. So staff, thank you so much. And let's move forward so that we don't get back in our timeline. All right, board, let's move forward to, oh, you do have comments. Trustee Baron, go ahead.
So lucky for everyone, I am an RHS student. And rebuilding the campus is something that every student for past recent many years have talked about. Why don't we have a nicer campus compared to the other high schools? Why are we the last to get these these nicer buildings, these nicer classrooms? Why do we have to? I think it was earlier this year. It was the Internationals building, even though it's a newer building, that did not have I believe the air conditioning went down back when it was incredibly hot in the beginning of the fall. And obviously those are issues that take place separately on their own. But it's things like that that really do matter and do not go unnoticed by students. Students notice how different our campus, our buildings are compared to others. And it does matter to us because it does impact our learning environment. It does impact how we learn, what we are taught. And it says a lot when you have these two schools that have that are predominantly Black and brown schools, and compared with the other schools in the district, these are the two that don't have the resources and buildings they deserve and should have. That says a lot. So no matter what, it does not go unnoticed by students. And trust me, there's always talk of, why don't we have windows? Why don't we have this? Why don't we have that? It matters to these students. It does not go unnoticed. And with these resources, with these new buildings, whatever it is that we need to improve our learning environments, it does have a huge impact on improving our students' futures and making sure we're getting them where we need them to be. It does not go unnoticed by students. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Varon. Okay, we're gonna move to a vote. We'll start with you, Trustee Varon.
Baron, yes.
Thank you, Clerk Smith Folds.
Smith Folds, yes.
Trustee Christian.
Christian, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler.
Reckler, yes.
Trustee Phillips.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Thank you, passed unanimously. Mr. Freeze, we'll move to the next item.
All right, hopefully the presentation is up this time. Let's see here. So again, tonight we are asking for a budget for the Kennedy project. Tonight we're asking for $1 million to allocate a planning budget as well as toward architectural services for the planning and site investigation services. We went through the similar RFQP process at the same time. So these were run parallel to the Richmond High process. Again, we went out for qualification for architects. The architects that were selected through the RFQ process moved on to the RFP process. And those candidates that moved forward were brought before the community and the school community as well, parents, staff, students, interviewed, and the selection was made. This particular award would go to HKIT Architects. The award amount on that one is $321,715. Again, we will need the planning dollars in order to bring this back to the board in the fall with an overall scoping project and budget to be awarded to move forward with the total project.
Thank you, Mr. Freeze. Do we have any public comment?
Our first public comment is Christina Coates. Please unmute yourself.
And then if we could put up the clock, please.
Please unmute yourself. Our next public comment is Don Gosney. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'd hope that it's just the board all knows me and a lot of the public knows me, that none of you would think that I'm an ignorant or a stupid person. I know that this is going to pass, but still I need to make comments on there. And the rebuttal to my comment about Stige being mostly Black and brown students, Yes, I know Kennedy High School and Richmond High School have Black and brown students, but in the community around Stige Elementary School, this is a community that have gone on record numerous times thinking that this district and this board and many other boards have specifically singled them out to not repair their school because of the extremely high percentage of Black and brown students there. And we're not doing anything to rebuild the trust in that community. I believe that the district can do a much, much better job and a more robust job of outreach to let the community know about these meetings that they're having. I own an online newspaper. I was never contacted by any about the 10 or 12 meetings for Kennedy and Richmond High School in the past. I've definitely been involved with the bond program. Never reached out to me about letting me know about these. The only meetings I found out about came from sources outside of the district itself. We've got to do a better job about this. Even the CBOC hasn't been really informed about what's going on with Kennedy High School and Richmond High School. And so, with regards to passing a new bond, I think you're dreaming. If this community does not have trust in this school district, and you got to ask yourself, why would the people of Hercules, of Pinole, of El Cerrito agree to tax themselves for another 40 years, knowing fully well that it's extremely unlikely that any of the bond money will be going to their community? It's just not going to happen. Plus, you all know, I know you know, because you're not stupid either. You cannot start spending more bond money until you pay off some of the other bonds. The state has regulations about that. Even though we've got a debt waiver limit, we're still limited to only 4% of the total valuation of the entire West Contra Costa County. We're nowhere close to that. We've got to pay off those other bonds before we can spend any more. So people aren't going to pass anymore. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Maisha Harris Gash. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening. I only get 1 minute. He got 2.
I'm sorry, let's just do everybody too, just for the future, everybody, for action and discussion items. We only do 1 minute, but for consistency, Ms. Gash, you're right. Let's do 2 minutes. And for the next items, we'll do 1 minute. Sorry about that, Ms. Gash. Harris Gash, sorry.
I understand. Thank you. All right. So I did participate in the interview process for the architects for Kennedy High School. I appreciate the opportunity. One thing I would say is, and maybe you guys already do this, but please tell the people presenting, act like you want the job versus coming in like almost like we're going to get it because we've already done work here in the district. There was somebody who came in with that kind of presentation. So that's just, don't do that. Come and let us know you want this job because you're passionate about it. As far as like who selected to sit on these panels, I agree with the previous speaker. We have to do better, that it's not last minute, that it is broad and a cross section. I think that probably comes down to the communication that comes to the site and how the site communicates to the school and as well to the community. So what I will say is this. I'm an option to help get it out to the community in different groups. I know at Kennedy, we're going through a transition right now, so who knows what's going to happen in the fall. Also, quiet as it may be, apologies are owed to the Stige and Kennedy communities for decades. And like, I'm a Kennedy graduate, I grew up in Richmond. So I know that these communities have not been supported financially throughout the decades. My grandparents, who are now deceased, but like my aunts, they still live in Richmond. My dad has property in Richmond. So, you know, they're paying money to support and fund this district. And I want Steve to be taken care of. Of course, I want Kennedy to be taken care of as well. We know that some of these decisions about the other schools that have been rebuilt were from previous boards. The gerrymandering that went on with no lines, we know that was previous boards. I went to Washington, I went to Kennedy, but now if you go to Washington, you even pass Kennedy to go to high school. So those things we may not be able to change, but in the end, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Our last public comment is Ian Batter. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, the name's actually Ian Bader. I'm the librarian at Kennedy, and I've been at Kennedy a long time. I think this is my 18th year. And I just want to start out by saying thank you to Mr. Freeze and especially Ms. Mejia Hooper who were coordinating the facilities end of all of this. They did a great job under difficult circumstances for arranging meetings and communicating with staff. And so despite the limits that the two previous speakers alluded to, we did manage to have some meetings, and especially student voice and a little bit of community voice was heard as well. So I just didn't want to do that. This is my third go around with a rebuilding committee since I've been there, and we haven't actually had anything built yet. So I'm urging you to go ahead and pass this and at least, get going on something. It's the 100-200 building is the main focus of this. That's the one right on Cutting Boulevard. It's the one everybody drives by, and it's the one everybody sees. And I'd like to see it get built, and we can get this process going. And then I'd like to see the rest of the school get modernized. We have extension cords all over the place. We have funky lighting and funky HVAC systems, and it's kind of cobbled together. So we're due. I'm disappointed that it's not a complete rebuilding, but I do understand the reality of the situation, and I'm just urging the whole board and Dr. Hurst to get on board, and let's start moving forward. So that's all I want to say tonight. So thank you for the time.
Thank you so much to all of our public comment. Board, any questions on this item? Trustee Reckler?
I do, thank you. It's the same question as before. There are no funds to continue the work from October. This must be passed to continue October's work.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. Okay, board, is there a motion? Trustee Phillips?
I move that the board pass item E4, allocate the Measure R 2020 planning budget and award the architectural contract for Kennedy High School modernization project.
Smith Folds, seconds.
Thank you. Let's move to comments. Anybody got any comments? Trustee Phillips, we'll start with you and head this way.
Thank you. So first, I want to address something that Trustee Christian said, and I think it's relevant. He said he doesn't know what happened to Kennedy. Now, Trustee Christian is older than me, but what happened to Kennedy is that the lines were redrawn, and it became an island of poverty. That's what happened to that school. So Ms. Harris-Gash called in, Don Gosney, who's called in several times, talks about the heyday of Kennedy when he went there, when people were assigned to that school who lived in the hills, when people were assigned to the school who lived in Point Richmond. The lines were withdrawn. People were segregated. That's what happened. We can do something about that, though, because the board has the ability to redraw those lines, and that's a conversation that should happen. I also want to talk very briefly about vendors who come here, whether it's for rebuilds like at Kennedy or anyone else. People need to get the message that this place is not a place that you just come for handouts, that we have money and that we should be happy because they showed up to take it. Because we have that perception and they have that perception of us. We get mistreated and we don't ever really get, I'm gonna say ever, the majority of time, we don't get the attention and the services that we really deserve, because people really act like we're doing them a favor by giving them our money. And that needs to stop. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Trustee Reckler, do you have comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, just very briefly, I do think it's important that the CBOC be put on the mailing list for any project meetings. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. Clerk Smith Folds.
I think one of the things that we have found since we've been in individual districts or areas is that it takes a lot of integrity to move past just the people who voted you in. If you truly care about the district as a whole, then you put your policy and your vote behind things that move the entire district forward, not just pleases your area. See, I believe that we're 5 fingers on one hand. So if we want our district to actually move the hand, then we have as fingers need to work together. Hercules, my children will never attend Kennedy and they will never attend Richmond because I live in Hercules, but I am duty bound and determined to vote yes for the children that I will never, ever have in that school. Because that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. That's what fingers on a hand do. I don't live there, but I'm obligated to take care of those who do. So when I vote yes for Richmond and I vote yes for Kennedy, I'm voting yes because that's what's supposed to be done. That is protective policy that we're supposed to put in place. You're absolutely right. When the lines got redrawn, then people started to leave. Absolutely. And we can do something about that as a board and say, no matter what line you fall on, you are going to be respected as students, as community members, and as families in this district. So your school is going to be like that school, one exit away. Hercules is one exit away from Pinole, and there's a vast difference. We're 3 exits away from Richmond, 4 exits away from El Cerrito. The vast difference that we have in this district can only be called what it is, and it is zip coding. If you live in one zip code, you're taken care of. If you live in another one, you're not. And that has to stop, and it stops with this board, not with the superintendent. It stops with the board because we set the vision. I am complete.
Thank you, Clerk Smith-Folds. For my comments first, can we please send the flyers to Mr. Gosney? And he can help us put it out there. Thank you, Ms. Sanders and Mr. Freeze. I'd appreciate that. I also agree, if we could just send it out to the board as well. We also have, newsletters, connections, social media. I would love to share every community meeting so that, we can build more people who are joining these meetings. Although I've heard great things about the meetings that have been offered so far. So thank you. I agree with everything that all the trustees said. So I don't want to just repeat what was said, but thank you. Let's move forward with this. Our Kennedy students, staff, and families deserve this as well. Let's move forward to a vote. Trustee Baron, we'll start with you.
Baron, yes.
Thank you, Clerk Smith-Folds.
Smith-Folds, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Christian.
Christian, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler.
Reckler, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you, Mr. Freeze. Okay, everybody, now we're going to be moving to our discussion items. The first one is, I think, is it Miss Neely Johnson and Mr. Flashman?
Good evening, Board President and Dr. Hurst and Board Trustees and Community. Special Ed Director Guthrie Fleischman is going to talk to you about an alternative pathway that we have for students with disabilities. This is very new, and so he's going to just give you a quick synopsis.
Good evening, Board, Superintendent, President Gonzalez-Hoy. Thank you for allowing me to present to you today. As Ms. Neely Johnson mentioned, this is a very new development in the state of California under AB 181. And as it is new, it's continuing to develop, and we have been working with LEAs across the state to gather understanding. Essentially, what we're talking about is an opportunity for a high school diploma as opposed to a certificate of completion for our students who take the CAA, which is the California Augmented Assessment, and who meet the statewide graduation requirements, which are similar to our adult school graduation requirements of 130 credits. These are students with profound and extensive support needs who traditionally earn a certificate of completion and continue to receive services until the age of 22. Under this new provision, they could receive a high school diploma and continue to receive those services until the age of 22, whereas traditionally students with IEPs, when they receive a high school diploma, services stop. Sounds very exciting. We are very excited. However, We are not all the way there yet as a state with this particular AB 181 opportunity. There's a statewide working group of which I have been a member this year. It did go on hiatus because of some of the things that I'm going to talk about next. It also was talked about at the AXA conference, some very, very passionate conversations happening with special education teachers, administrators, district administrators, et cetera. A lot of excitement when this first was announced, and then some realization that there's actually some difficulties here. Earlier, I mentioned that it's students who take the CAA and who meet the statewide graduation requirements, which require the taking and passing of gen ed courses. And it was described by a state school administrator that we are searching for unicorns right now, because traditionally the students who take the CAA do not take gen ed classes anywhere in the state. So it's created kind of an excitement and an opportunity, but some real frustration across the state, and really some real passionate work that's happening to revise the language of this so that it actually does create the opportunity that it set out to do in the first beginning of the school year. It has not done that yet, but like I said, the work is happening across the state. Fortunately, a recent development, there's some trailer bill language for the May revise that actually addresses this. We're actually attending a meeting tomorrow with a number of LEAs across the state to just talk about this trailer bill language and really requesting the CDE to better define and to provide a true opportunity for students who traditionally receive a certificate of completion to get that high school diploma. One point about language that I really want to emphasize, there's been confusion because I've heard the phrase alternative diploma stated a lot in these conversations. It is not an alternative diploma. It is an alternative pathway to a high school diploma. And that's very, very important distinction. It is a high school diploma that will carry the value of my high school diploma, your high school diplomas, et cetera. So please be careful when having these conversations in the community. Let's not call it an alternative diploma. It's happening a lot and it's getting fixed, but it's an alternative pathway to a high school diploma. The last piece that I want to say is that, like I said, there's this trailer bill language that's asking the CDE to better define this and really create a true opportunity. We'll be attending that conversation tomorrow. I'm complete.
Thank you so much, Mr. Flashman and Ms. Neely Johnson. Are there any public comment for this item?
No public comment.
Thank you. Board, we're gonna move to questions. Trustee Phillips?
Thank you for your presentation. This is exciting. I do have a question about money, though. So what you said is that normally, once the child got his or her diploma, the services would stop, correct?
That's correct.
But what's going to happen now is that the services will continue, correct?
That's correct.
Are additional funds going to come in to cover those additional services?
They will not. These are services that would have been rendered to these students in their years of 18 to 22 years old after completing their time at high school. Traditionally, this happens at our transition site at Vista Hills. So these are students who would have received those services anyway. Fundamentally, the greatest change here is the document that they receive is a diploma as opposed to a certificate of completion. But the services won't change from what they're currently receiving.
Well, I'm not saying that the services will change, but what I heard you say is that currently the services would stop if they got that diploma. But under this new change, the services will continue after they get the diploma. So I get that if they never got the diploma, they would still go through 22 and get services, right?
Correct.
I totally get that. But for the ones who are not, who are getting the diploma where it would have stopped in the past, meaning the services would not have continued, is there additional money that's going to come for those kids?
No, that's a really good question. The direction that's come out from CDE is that the students that are currently what we call currently diploma track, which are traditionally for the most part, RSP students who have usually maybe a period of tutorial, sometimes it's consult, but are in mainstream classes throughout the day and throughout their high school career. Those students will receive their diploma and those services will stop as they always have. We're talking specifically about the students who receive their diploma through the alternative pathway and who take the CAA. Those students will continue to receive the services that they would have received if they got the certificate of completion. Ultimately, it's a net zero when it comes to funding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, trustee Phillips. We did miss one public comment, so if it's okay with the board, we'll move to that public comment now, and then we'll come back to more questions.
Our public comment is Jose De Leon.
And if we could update the clock to 1 minute, please.
Good afternoon, or almost good evening. One of the things we struggle at school is giving purpose to students. And one set of students, once they understand that they're going to go through 4 years of school, then they're going to get a cap and gown and walk the stage, is the MMSN students. This bill would give them that extra purpose. So support for them to get through required graduation requirements, be it the state's requirements and not the district requirements, ultimately gives the family and the student a purpose to be in school. For the most part, once students see purpose and we can communicate purpose to them, they will rise to the occasion. So I see this change as very, very important to support all our communities on campus. Yes, it will be difficult. Yes, it will take a lot of planning for it to be successful for all the students.
Thank you so much, Mr. De Leon. Appreciate it. Okay, board, we're gonna move to questions again. Trustee Reckler.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Where did the language come from for this board policy rewrite?
The language that led us to this conversation, or the actual board policy itself?
The actual rewrite that we're looking at. What did CSBA send it? Did our attorney review it? I'm just trying to.
I can jump in on that. Yes, so this language came actually from SELPA, and so we're working with the state, Department of Education for special ed, and we're all using the same language. And so one of the recommendations was that we put this in place. So as we're working towards, creating, like Guthrie said, just real understanding of what it will look like in our district, that we can move forward and we don't have to go backwards. So right now, all of the state SELPAs are putting this in their board policies, but we're also continuing to create what that pathway looks like.
Okay, that's helpful. So the next thing is, because I'm a little confused about this, this is not optional to adopt, but it is, we get to construct what it looks like. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then finally is you're going to come back after the trailer bill with any big mods?
That's correct, yes. As it develops, the trailer bill, but also the statewide working group is continuing to share ideas as far south as San Diego, as far north as Eureka, SELPA directors and LEAs. So as we learn more, we can present more.
Okay, so just for timing, just to clarify, so trailer bills can, be late summer, whatever. That's when we'll expect to see this again?
What I'm going to say is that we will be bringing back the work that is done with the working group, but we are told that we should have this in place because parents are going to want to make sure that they will maybe in their IEPs start asking for their child to be on that pathway. And so what we're doing is making sure that this is in place, but also sharing with them that we're continuing to work on the process. And we're starting with 9th grade. So 9th graders this year are receiving a letter. I'm just kind of explaining what Guthrie just explained to you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I'm complete.
Thank you, trustee Reckler. Clerk Smith Folds.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It is very much appreciated. And I would like to ask the question, Director Johnson and Mr. Fleischman, what do you need from us as a board? What can we do to help? What do you need from us? How do we help champion this? What would you need from us?
It's an excellent question. I think that the space to continue to do the work with the other LEAs, and then as we're able to develop and formulate a strong plan, the voice to what we're building and getting it out there and speaking in the community about it, advocating for this opportunity here at the board when you have that opportunity to do so, when we're able to come back with a stronger proposal for what this can look like in our district, when we have that better understanding from CDE to support us in that push.
Thank you. President Gonzalez-Hoy, I just have a comment. I'm complete.
Thank you so much. Board, let's move to comments. Since it's just a discussion item, we don't need a motion. So we'll start with trustee Phillips.
So first, I think that this is good. I think that this is positive. So I'm glad to hear about it. I am glad for the presentation. I asked about money for some obvious reasons. For our fiscal state overall, for the role that special education plays in that as well. I will say, though, that I don't think that this is budget neutral. That doesn't mean that I don't think we should do it, but I don't think that this is budget neutral. So when you hear Principal De Leon come up here and just start talking about this is going to take a lot of work. I was listening. I listen even if I'm not looking like I do, but this is going to take a lot of work. This is going to take a lot of planning. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. That's not budget neutral. And I think as local agencies, and it's not just education, right? So we as a state expand who can get Medi-Cal, and then the state doesn't fund it. And so everybody goes, woo-hoo, somebody can get this and somebody can get that, and we're all happy because it's deserved. But they don't fund all of these good things that they put in place. And so as we have conversations, as you have conversations, as the CELPs around the state have conversations, I would hope that part of that conversation ends up being, this is really great, and how are you going to help us pay for it? Because the state, they're cheapskates, and they get away with that all the time. And then local agencies, local cities, counties try to figure out how to pay for it. And it's not right. This is a good program, but that ain't right. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Phillips. Clerk Smith Folds.
Director Johnson, Mr. Fleischman, thank you for the hard work that you do. If you never had a kid that was your kid and you never had to think, is my kid going to be okay? Because they grow up. Programs like this and opportunities that the special ed program in West Contra Costa gives parents is the ability to take a deep breath and say, my kid's going to be okay. From the prom to actually earning a diploma. They've been here 13 years like everybody else, and they deserve to have a diploma. If you never saw a kid who struggles with high levels of anxiety still sitting in an English class, who's reading 3 grade levels behind, but still has to do Shakespeare. If you've never experienced that, you never understand the real walking in mud that our special education students do every single day for 13 years. And they deserve to walk across that stage and be handed a diploma that helps with economic progression. That's what a high school diploma does. It helps you economically raise your stature, and they deserve that. And as a district, if we can see ourselves being truly inclusive, that means we have action behind our inclusivity. And this is what action looks like. So Director Johnson and Mr. Fleischman, whatever you need from, I believe, the majority of this board to champion that, then I think that we are able to do that because they deserve it. They deserve it. And if we have to retrain our teachers, our sites, our district, our own culture shifting, then that's what we're going to have to do, because these kids deserve to walk across that stage and earn a diploma like everybody else. I encourage all of the board to go out to one of our MMSN classes, one of our special ed classes, and talk to the parents. Talk to them and say, I know what you're going through. I want to listen and learn what you're going through because I want to help your baby be the best version of themselves. You deserve it. I'm complete.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Flashman. Thank you, Ms. Neely Johnson. We're gonna now move to the next item. Actually, I think it's Ms. Neely Johnson. I think it's your item as well.
Yes, this is a very quick item. It's actually, whenever we're doing, our CSACE work and we're continuing, we have 17 more months of that. And also our local plan, we're, rewriting our local plan. This is the 3rd year. We need to review and update, board policies. And so, our department has done that work and we brought it to cabinet for review. And now we're bringing to you for review.
Thank you so much, Ms. Neely Johnson. Staff, do we have any public comment on this item? No public comment. Thank you. Board, any questions? Okay. I'm sorry, Trustee Reckler?
Yes, hi, same as before. Who writes the edits? Where do the edits come from?
Sorry. We used recommendations from CSBA. And we also then look at our own CSACE work and make sure that our policies are not, adding more disproportionality, because we are in CSACE for just, significant disproportionality. We're now in, we're going to be out in 17 months totally. So I'm very excited about that. But we do look at those policies that already exist to make sure that ours are updated.
And so do they match word for word the CSBA recommendation, or are they special in any way?
Yes, we do. Most of us in terms of SELPA, especially around local plan, we try to be uniform, but we do review all of those to make sure that they're accurate. And so, yes, what you have here is your edit. You have an edit and then you have a clean version. And so you can see that they're matched word for word.
Match word for word to the CSBA. I'm asking because we got that big kickback list. And so I just want to know if these would come back on the kickback list of not matching.
Yes, I think I heard the last part. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. Board, any comments on this item? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Neely Johnson. We're now gonna move to the revisions to Title IX. Dr. Hurst, I'm not sure who has this one.
Mr. Jose Espinoza is here.
Hi, good evening, board members and Dr. Hurst. I'm Jose Espinoza, Title IX Director for the Office of Educational Equity Title IX Department. Our department is requesting to update the contact information for Board Policy 5145.3, Board Policy 4119.11, and Board Policy 0410. We have also updated the language within Board Policy 5145.3 to include the district's non-discrimination statement. These policies have been approved by the California Department of Education and is needed in order to complete a section of the Education Equity Federal Programs Monitoring Review.
Thank you so much, Mr. Espinosa. Sorry, were you done with your presentation? I apologize.
Yes, I'm done.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Are there any public comment on this item? No public comment.
No public comment.
Thank you so much. Board, are there any questions? Clerk Smith Folds?
Good evening, Mr. Espinoza. I do have a question about, and I don't know if this is the right time to ask, but I'm just going to ask it. Our uniform complaint form, are we going to update this form at all at any time, or is that something that the board needs to discuss?
Yes, so I can update that information. There's one section that does need to be updated. That would be the special education, since that's not covered under the UCP. So my department can move forward with updating that.
Thank you. My second question is, Dr. Hurst, when we're looking at the uniform complaint form, we have certain categories. Please check all the categories referred to in your complaint, and it goes adult education, preschool, on and on and on. And then there's one paragraph for unlawful discrimination, and then everything's lumped in there. Is there a way, or do you believe that once you talk to staff, that there may be a way to bullet point that out also? Because then it's very specific about what the complaint is. Is that a conversation that you're willing to have with staff?
Was that a conversation or a question for me or for
No,
Dr.
that was for me, Jose. Yes, we can have that conversation with staff. I'm looking at the form now.
Thank you very much. I'm complete. Just comments, President Gonzalez-Hoy.
Thank you, Clerk Smith Folds. We're gonna now move to comments. So we'll start with you, Clerk Smith Folds, and we'll head this way. Sorry, if we could put up the timer. Thank you.
As we culture shift as a district, as we move towards inclusion and equality and anti-racism, and as we move forward, we're going to get a lot of pushback. So the best way we can handle that is tighten up as well as we can our Title IX office, right? So that we are able to flush these complaints out and make sure that we're addressing them specifically. So that is why I asked the question, board, about how do we name each part of it? Sexual harassment, how do we name anti-racism? How do we name gender inequality? How do we name it to where those who have the right to file the complaint are very clear in what they're asking the district to investigate? I think it will allow us to clean it up and make sure that we are able then to put policy in to address the complaints that we are charged to look at. So the Title IX office is one that needs to have those resources and support, because again, Dr. Hurst, I think we're moving to an anti-racist district. So we need to make sure that the community that experiences the harm that we have in Title IX will have ways to then turn around and be able to address the board, address us, and we are able to address policy. I think that this board is moving in a very firm direction. Thank you, President Gonzalez-Hoy, for your leadership on that. We're going in a direction of not here. We're determining who we are as WCCUSD, and that's a district that's inclusive, and inclusivity is an action. I'm complete.
Thank you, Clerk Smith Folds. I don't see any other comments. So, Mr. Espinosa, thank you so much for being here tonight. We're gonna now move to item F4. Dr. Hurst. I think this is Mr. Freeze, but just.
Yes, this is Mr. Freeze.
Actually, I'll be doing F4 this evening. Thank you very much. Tonight, I wanted to, we're bringing forth an item that's part of our normal bond refunding, refinancing program that we look at annually with the goal of trying to make sure that we're reaping savings in the existing debt that we have in the market where possible and within the board's policies. And so at the direction of staff, the district's finance team, including K&N Public Finance, who's our municipal advisor, JP Morgan Securities are the underwriter we used in the last several transactions, and Nixon Peabody, our bond counsel and disclosure counsel, have prepared a presentation tonight outlining an approach to potentially reduce the burden on the district's taxpayers. In the past, in order to achieve savings for taxpayers, the district has issued new refunding bonds, which take out the existing bonds and act to refinance the district's debt at a lower interest rate. Due to limitations in tax code, many of these bonds were issued on a taxable basis, such that investors holding these bonds pay taxes on their earnings. The process presented tonight by Mr. Tyler Old of JP Morgan Securities would be similar to the district's usual process for refunding bonds. However, the district's investors would have the opportunity to tender or sell back their bonds to the district. The district would prepare an offer to investors where they can choose to return their taxable bonds to the district, would have the opportunity to purchase a new series of district's tax exempt bonds. So tonight, Tyler Old from JP Morgan Securities will explain the possibility before you for your consideration and direction. And we also have Mr. Blake Boehm of KNN, our municipal advisor, to help answer questions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and load up the presentation. And hopefully Mr. Tyler Old will jump on and start.
Sure, I'm here as soon as the. Let's see. Is it? There we go. Okay. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Hurst. Thank you for your time on this item. My name is Tyler Old with JP Morgan, one of the members of the district's banking team. As we think about the district's bond portfolio, we are always looking for opportunities to refinance debt at a lower cost to generate savings for taxpayers. And the district right now has about $340 million of bonds outstanding that were issued on a taxable basis when interest rates were quite low to refinance prior debt. And so the district's already captured savings once from these bonds. And what we're looking at potentially doing is to try and get some additional savings out of these same bonds. And it's very similar to the district's typical refunding approach, except the bonds that we're looking at are not currently subject to optional redemption. In other words, we can't compel bondholders to part with these bonds. But what we can do is invite bondholders to tender or sell their bonds back to the district. And that's what we're looking to explore further. Next slide, please. So why is this opportunity available when borrowing costs are higher today than they have been in the past? And there's two reasons for this. The first is because the bonds are currently valued below par, below their face value. And that's because interest rates have increased. And we try and illustrate this in the bottom half of this slide, where the blue line is the price of the bonds and the orange line is a proxy for interest rates. And this is just a sample of one of the bonds that the district issued back in 2021. And you can see that as interest rates, as the orange line has moved higher over the past 2 years, the actual price of the bond that's trading in the secondary market has declined by about 20%. And so that's, we capture savings by being able to repurchase that bond below its face value. And the second way to generate savings here is because we're now able to go back and issue tax exempt bonds because the district is a governmental agency and can issue tax exempt debt. We can use tax exempt bonds to pay for the tender, pay for that repurchase. So switching from taxable back to tax exempt provides additional savings. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the tender process is quite similar to the district's usual refinancing process, except that in this case, we're inviting investors to sell their bonds back to the district. As I mentioned, in the typical refinancing, the district can compel investors to give up the bonds. These bonds aren't eligible at this point for that option. Because we are inviting the existing holders to tender their bonds back, the success in getting investors to participate is highly dependent on knowing who they are. And some types of investors are looking for this type of an opportunity in their portfolios to tender bonds, and other types of investors aren't really interested. They prefer, they like the district's credit, they prefer to hold on to those bonds as long as they can. And we've done initial work in that identification process based on publicly available information, investors who actually report their holdings. And we've identified roughly 34% of the holders of these particular bonds, and they're mostly insurance companies. I think to determine the feasibility of moving forward, we need to really try and identify as much of that gray part of the pie as we can. That gray part, the 66%, represents bondholders that are out there, but we can't see who they are. We don't have that level of information. And in order to get that visibility, it does require incurring some additional cost with your bond trustee and a service provider that has access to that information. And so that's what we're asking to proceed and try and identify some of the additional bondholders to determine whether this is an opportunity that's worth staff and the district's time, or if the savings levels may not meet the board's policy. We've in other tender opportunities, we've seen anywhere from 10% to 30% of outstanding bondholders participate, and that for the district could generate anywhere from, call it, $3 to $10 million of savings. But again, it's highly dependent on understanding and knowing who the holders are and whether or not they would be inclined to participate in something like this. So with that, that concludes my slides. I'll hand it back to Dr. McIntyre or Blake at KNN if you have any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Old. So part of what we were hoping to do is find out if the board, this is not what we always do. It's a little different, but there is an opportunity to save taxpayers money. But we would have to spend a little bit going out and kind of surveying and trying to identify those people holding, the outstanding taxable bonds to see if they're interested in selling them back. So theoretically, we could put up a little bit of cost. And I think Mr. Boehm from KNN can speak to the cost around that. But we're really looking to see if this is a direction the board is interested in pursuing, just so we don't spend, resources on something that is not aligned, with the will of the majority of the board. Mr. Boehm, did you have anything you wanted to share?
Thanks, Robert, and good evening, board. Yeah, I'll just kind of point out that with the JP Morgan information that has been previously shared with staff and the KNN team, we reviewed it with the lens of the district's existing refunding policy. And so the refunding candidates that have been discussed this evening at the various participation levels of existing bondholders, so 10, 20, and 30%, currently all meet the refunding policy guidelines. Historically, the district and board have been extremely proactive in any and all opportunities to save taxpayers money when those opportunities present themselves. As Dr. McIntyre has shared, this is a little different than historically the refunding process that we've gone through, although by and large, the expectation of the end result is very close to the exact same thing. And so, you know, in each case that bankers are looking at this for agencies, there's kind of a different set of circumstances, a different set of bondholders. I will say that K&N just worked with JP Morgan and is currently working with them through a similar process with San Diego Unified, has a lot of the same variables and circumstances. So this is not something outside of the norm, I would say. And those are just some additional comments and details that I would share. In terms of the cost of what's called an information agent that would assist the district's team with identifying who bondholders are, I have been told that that cost is approximately $20,000 to $30,000 for their work. I would, in conjunction with Dr. McIntyre, explore that in more detail should the board look to move forward, at least with the initial stages of this process.
Thank you so much, everybody, for the presentation. Staff, do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you so much. And before we move to questions, can we just get clarity? This is a discussion item, but you're looking for direction tonight?
Correct. So the board's not committed to tendering or making a tender. But, you know, if there was a will to move forward, then, you know, we would need to spend a small amount of money on trying to track down the holders to find out how big, you know, just to basically size the savings. So we could bring that item back as an action item. You know, but, you know, if the discussion is this is not what we normally like to do, then I'll read the tea leaves, so to speak.
Thank you so much. Board, let's move to questions then. Trustee Reckler?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So if I may, I just want to read back what I heard. So I'm making sure that I'm cementing it. So due to unfavorable market conditions, inflation, interest rates, blah, 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 the bond market is no longer favorable and has suffered value. Correct statement?
Correct statement.
Okay, next part of this is we have a board policy where on a yearly basis, we go out and look for savings for our taxpayers. You call it refunding, but in honesty, it's refinancing, like looking for savings to save on a mortgage.
Also correct.
Okay, next is board policy dictates that we need to look for savings we need to clear at least $1 million in savings for the taxpayers, correct?
That is correct.
All fees are out, done, everything.
Fully burdened. Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
Okay, now you're going to you're going to try and entice people to come back and sell their bonds back. And the enticement is that you can move from a taxable to a tax exempt bond, and that is favorable to bondholders because you don't have to pay taxes on it, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then all right, so let me see, is there anything else? Okay, so then you are estimating that there is a minimal cost to this of $20,000 or $30,000 to go out and find the people who own our bonds. We know who 34% of the bondholders are, but we're looking for 66% because they don't declare on any financial statements.
That is correct.
Okay. Hey, you guys did good explaining this. All right. Okay. So for minimal cost, $20,000 or $30,000. Okay. So
Trustee Reckler, sorry, because that's for questions. You're doing great. Actually understanding you a lot better than even our wonderful presenters. But why don't we go see if the other people
Okay,
have questions,
I-
and then we'll come back to you because
okay, thanks.
I appreciate your questions. Anyone else? Clerk Smith Folds?
I apologize. I had to step out for a minute. Did I just hear Trustee Reckler say that you have to go out and find the people?
Yes, ma'am.
They didn't sign a piece of paper? Or, I mean, how they get lost?
They're not lost. Maybe Mr. Old can explain the kind of why there's not a list for us just to draw from on this.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, they're not lost. It's certain bondholders, primarily larger institutional investors, they are required to publicly report their bond holdings. But there's a lot of investors who are not required to actually report that information publicly. It's all held within the bond clearing agency that holds all of your bonds, but we don't have access to that. That's the additional cost, is to get access to that.
It costs $30,000 to get access to a building that has the name of the people on the list that hold the bonds. I'm not being facetious. I really want to know.
That is, you are correct. Yes.
President Gonzalez Hoy, I'm in the wrong business and I'm incomplete. I am complete.
Thank you, Clerk Phillips. Trustee Phillips.
Dr. McIntyre, if we were to go through this process, the entire process from now to the end, and refinancing is complete, what would be the total cost to the district?
There are fixed costs and variable costs for both. So we would have to include that in before we could make our proposal to execute. We'd have to bring our normal like point of sale documents back to the board for approval. I don't have it off the top of my head. Mr. Boehm, do you have that? Do you have that accessible?
An estimate, yes, but just to clarify for Trustee Phillips, the actual cost to the district, if completing this refinancing transaction, would actually be paid for out of the proceeds of the refinancing itself and not from the district funds. The savings that would be generated and reported out would be net of any and all costs associated with the transaction itself.
How do I put this? And I hope this is not a question. Maybe it is. We could do another round. I didn't really ask where the money was going to come from to pay for this. I asked, what is the total cost? And those are two different questions.
So there are several components in the cost. For example, our legal fees it would be a fixed cost. It would be a base amount. Then the underwriter charges a percentage of the amount refunded. Similarly, our financial advisor charges a percentage of the amount refunded. So you've got this fixed cost in legal, and then you've got a variable cost depending on how big the transaction size is. So that's why I'm not trying to be dodgy in any way.
You weren't dodgy, he was.
I understand.
Go
I
ahead.
understand. I definitely want to be clear with you. And we are required to bring back the specifics, like this is X, this is Y, this is Z for board as part of the documents for board approval before we can move forward with anything. But I would be happy to send the board a written estimate based on where we're kind of hoping the transaction comes in. Maybe I can give you a high low based on a couple, like if we get $3 million versus $30 million worth of refunding. So that way the board can have kind of a sense of it, if that's useful to you.
It is.
And Dr.
I
McIntyre,
asked 3 questions, so I'll wait until.
You have one more, Trustee Phillips.
For what it's worth, just for a point of reference, the last refinancing transaction that the district completed in 2021 was a par amount of just under 150 million, and the all-in costs there were approximately $1 million.
Are we going to be able to do another round of questions?
I think that we're doing really well on time, so, we can go another round.
Okay, so then my last question on this round is currently, Dr. McIntyre, you don't know you don't have an estimate for the cost currently.
We do not, because we don't know how many people are willing to sell back their bonds.
Okay.
That's really the what's up in the air at this point.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I only have one question. I don't think that you'll be able to answer, but if we were to go through this whole process, let's say that we do find a large amount of people, do we have an estimate of how much we could potentially save the average taxpayer?
We did put together a kind of a pro forma if we had X dollars, and it's not in this presentation, is it? So or here, if we had 10%, for example, 10% of the bondholders participated, then the savings would be 7.4% or $2.55 million after costs. If 20% participated, it would jump up to 5.1 million. If 30%, then 7.8 million. So 7.6% savings to the taxpayers. So it just depends on the amount that we can identify and their willingness. We may put it out that we may spend $20,000-$30,000 finding these people, and they say, I'm underwater on it. I don't want to swap them out for tax-free. No, thanks. And then we will have lost that money. That is a potentiality in this.
Thank you, Dr. McIntyre. Okay, we're gonna do our second round of questions. Trustee Reckler, we'll start with you.
Okay, so I do have a second round, and that is, how successful do you think you can be in finding what did you say? It was 10% or 7% of the bondholders?
Well, the presentation included preliminary tender results based on the investor participation levels at 10, 20, and 30%. But I think Mr. Tyler can speak to more recent transaction volume and what the kind of typical percent or range of percentage that they've seen in kind of the similar process.
Yeah, so just other people that you've worked in who have 66% of their people, that you have to go dig around and find who the non-reporters are. How successful have you been? How successful do you think you're going to be here?
The success is really dependent on who those bondholders turn out to be. Typically we have pretty good success identifying that remaining, that gray area right here, the 66%. In past transactions, we've been able to identify most of that non-reporting bucket. And then depending on the types of investors that are in that bucket that we don't know now, that really drives the ultimate participation. As I said, some investors are willing to and have various reasons why they want to sell these bonds back. Others don't, and they want to hold on to those bonds. And we just have to figure out who they are and what type of investor they are, and we'll have a lot more clarity in terms of being able to know whether or not they're likely to participate.
Okay.
So for example, one investor class, I'm sorry to speak over you, Trustee Reckler, one investor class we're unlikely to have participate in this offering would be insurance companies. And they're large holders. They're that 33%. So the insurance companies don't want to take the book loss in order to get the tax savings because they care about their book value. Whereas individual investors could really see a good upside to it.
Okay, so it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that the worst case scenario in this is staff time and $30,000. The upside is potential between $3 and $10 million in savings. Is that accurate?
That is my best understanding. Yes, Trustee Reckler.
And what is your recommendation on this?
I mean, we are tight on cash, but the district has been very aggressive in trying to realize every dollar of savings in the bond program it can. And so because it meets the threshold laid out in the debt policy, I would recommend moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, trustee Reckler. Clerk Smith Foltz.
How many times have we spent money looking for these people's names? Is this the very first time?
Yes, ma'am. This is the first time we've done this type of transaction.
Can this be the last time? Can we write their names down so we don't have to do it again?
I would have to defer to Mr. Old.
Mr. Ode, can we write their names down so we don't have to do it again?
We certainly can. The challenge is these bonds, investors sell their bonds. And so we will have a snapshot when we do this, we'll know who holds them at this time. But 6 months from now, some of those investors could have sold their bonds or purchased more bonds. And so, you know, your holders do change over time.
Thank you for that answer. President Gonzalez-Hoy, I'm complete.
Thank you, Clerk Smith Foltz. Trustee Phillips.
Dr. McIntyre, can you help me understand where the savings come in? And I want to give you some context because that sounds like a wild question. To the extent that what we're really doing is refinancing, I understand how, and I know it's not a mortgage, but comparing the two, I understand how you can refinance and then have a lower monthly payment, but it's lower because you've stretched out the terms of the repayment, not because you got a discount or a refund. And so over the course of time, you may not really have saved anything. Over the course of time, you may actually end up paying more. So I get how the payment might be lower, but help me really understand how overall, in the long term, taxpayers are really saving money.
Thank you for asking this question, because this is probably many other people may feel the same way. And really what we're not extending the term at all. So if we buy a bond, or if we refinance a bond that has 29-year life, the debt will remain 29 years of life. What we're doing is taking advantage of the arbitrage between a taxable and non-taxable asset. And so that difference yields a savings for us, the person who has to pay the interest on the bond. Because the bond holder values the bond differently, whether it's taxable or not taxable. So we're really trying to capture the arbitrage between the taxable and non-taxable portion. So there is technically a rate difference, not a term difference. And if I mess that up, team, please jump on and say I messed it up, because I don't want to misstate anything. Okay.
Trustee Phillips, is that your last question? President Gonzalez-Hoy has stepped away.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it wasn't. He had asked a question and then, I'm sorry, the voice threw me off. He had asked a question and then to them, and I was just waiting for their response.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a correct response. This is Blake Beam with KNN. That is an accurate response in terms of not extending the life through a refinancing and the way in which savings are realized through a refinancing, this particular refinancing effort.
And that rate that we're trying to capture, do we actually know at this point what that is?
No, sir. So we have estimates, but it's not exact. There is an actual negotiation that takes place with the existing bondholders.
So we don't know how much this is going to cost us, and we don't know what the rate is that we're actually trying to capture currently.
I don't know that I would say it that way, sir. We have we know the rate that it will cost us to identify who the holders are. So we can contact them and identify the size of the potential pool.
Let me just back up. So I know that costs $30-something thousand. I'm going back to my original question, which was how much, do you know how much this will cost the district from start to finish if we were to go all the way through? And the answer to that question was no, we don't know that information right now. So that's what I was referencing. So we don't know right now what the total cost would be to the district. And we don't, if we were to go through it with this, and we also don't know right now what this rate is that we would be trying to capture. And we also don't know how many folks would actually participate, but we think that there are large institutional holders like insurance companies that won't.
All of those statements are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Okay, so that was 2 rounds of questions. So let's move now to comments to clarify if in everybody's comments, you could share your perspective. Do we want to move this forward, which means that staff would bring us back this contract or budget for us to approve at the next meeting, if you would like to move forward. If not, please just obviously also share that. Since we do need direction, it will require everybody to speak. So we'll start with, is it okay we start with you, Trustee Phillips? And we'll head this way, or?
I'm thinking about it.
Okay, no worries. Who is ready to share their perspective? Okay, Trustee Reckler.
Okay, so I am inclined to go ahead and do this because we're going to spend $20,000 or $30,000, which really is not a huge amount of money. And we have the potential of returning between $3 and $10 million to taxpayers. That's worth a gamble to me. That to me is worth the gamble. You only need to find 10% participation to return some savings. The way the policy is written, which isn't awesome, but we have to clear 1 million. So yeah, there could be fees of 50 and we end up with 1, but you know, it's on my list to someday look at, but that's the way the policy is written. So it is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. Yeah, I don't see any others jumping in. Okay, go ahead, Trustee Clerk Smith-Bowles.
I think that spending $30,000, $20,000 to $30,000 is an ask when we are looking for savings. It is an ask. For me personally, I would need more of a compelling, this is what I can kind of guarantee. And I know that's what you can't tell me, right? You cannot tell me what we would get back for $30,000. I do want to save the taxpayers money though, because that's also something that we should be charged to do. This is really gonna have me to pause and think about weighing both of those things, right? Spending $30,000 that we really don't have versus saving taxpayers a lot of money that they do deserve to have a savings. President Gonzalez, I know you asked for some type of, for us to state what we need to say. Dr. McIntyre, I would have to say that I'm sitting right neutral. I'm not leaning one way or the other because I would need more compelling evidence on both sides. I'm complete.
Okay, Trustee Phillips.
Thank you for the additional explanation around extending the life versus the rate. I do understand that. My concern, and I was asking the questions around how much money would this cost the district from beginning to end. Another question that I had was the people who are working on this, you know, how much money are they going to make? That's just not a question that I got to with the numbers that we have. And, you know, they make $1 million, which they might based on the comments from Blake, but if they make $1 million and we break even with $1 million. To me, it feels like the only people who actually made any money is them. Which goes to why I was like, how much is this going to cost? And how much, do you think we're going to get, on the back end? And I understand you don't know, you don't have a crystal ball. But as I sit here right now, I just kind of feel like the only people who are really like guaranteed that they're going to make money are the people who are zooming in. I don't know how I feel about that, to be 100% honest. If I were to have additional information, I probably would say yes. And I understand you have to spend some money to get the names, but even if some of this other stuff was able to get costed out, I probably would say yes. Just in this moment, I did not hear really anything close, I think, to the answers that to the questions that I had.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips.
Sir, may I have? Is it?
Go ahead.
Okay, I apologize. Thank you for the latitude. It is important to recognize that the district did do an RFP for KNN, the mutual advisor. So we have a structured fee agreement that the board has approved previously. And so all of the point of sale documents would outline all of the fees. And I hope by now, if you know anything about your CFO, it's that I'm not going to bring a deal that makes somebody else richer than our taxpayers. So it's while I can't give the level of detail and specificity, the district has gone out to bid for the financial advisor and the and legal. And so the only thing that's left is underwriting. And we of course want to make sure our underwriting fee is reasonable, and those percentages would be in the point of sale agreement.
Thank you, Dr. McIntyre. So so far, just for lack of better words, we have one person has said, yes, let's move forward. And two, for lack of better words, abstain for lack of information. Trustee Christian, where are you?
Yeah, I'm for it.
You would like it to move forward? Okay. Thank you. And then for me, Dr. I share a lot of concerns that Trustee Phillips and Trustee Clark-Smith both shared. It makes me uncomfortable not knowing what the final cost would be with our current financial situation. I also agree with Trustee Phillips. I don't think it's just going to be $30,000, right? So that does make me anxious. I think that it would be great for us to know as we move through the process anything that's going to cost, right? So past the $30,000 that you're keeping us informed, right? Of what it will cost. But I do also agree with Trustee Reckler that if we can find savings for the taxpayers with what they're currently experiencing, right? I think it's a good thing, right? So for me, I'm also a yes that we move forward. So please set the next board meeting. Let's agendize bringing back the cost of the contract, for lack of better words. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the
everybody.
direction.
Thank you for the presenters as well. Okay, we're gonna now move to our last item, which is F5, our summer school update. Dr. Hurst Pastillo.
Thank you so much. We wanted to make sure that we came to the board.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Dr. Hurst. I totally skipped our student trustee with that voting. So I do apologize for the last item. If we could go back. Trustee Barron, please accept my apology for not calling you. Sorry, Dr. Hurst, for interrupting you. Trustee Barron, do you have any thoughts on that last item before we move forward? No. Okay. Well, please, I apologize. Sorry, everybody. Dr. Hurst, please continue.
Thank you so much, sir. So we have our Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Huffman, and we also have our SEPA Director, Ms. Sonia Neely Johnson, and also our Director of Communications, Ms. Liz Sanders. I asked them to bring forward what we're doing for extended school year, for summer school, but also what the communication has been throughout this process. So we have a team of people here. We're going to turn it over first to Ms. Huffman.
Good evening, board, parents, community, and Dr. Hurst. I'm presenting before you with directors from Educational Services and the SELPA department, our SPED department, and communications. So we're going to be presenting our summer programming for 2023, which includes updates about general education for elementary, middle and high school students, high school credit recovery, extended school year, ESY, expanded learning after school enrichment, and summer day camps. Next slide, please. For our summer program design for summer 2023, there will be a variety of offerings across the district. We're going to have centrally planned summer school for students prioritized for intervention, including students in need of credit recovery. We're also going to have special education extended school year, ESY. We're also offering expanded learning programs and site-specific summer offerings. We're going to have 31 school sites total. We're also going to have 16 academically focused programs and 11 with expanded learning enrichment and 11 with expanded learning enrichment programs only. Next slide, please. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Director Elizabeth Henry. Thank you.
Good evening and thank you. Students were invited to attend summer programming based on our district's prioritization matrix, which includes the following factors: LCAP indicators, assessment and attendance metrics, and prioritization for our historically underserved students and students with IEPs. Next slide, please.
Good evening, President Gonzalez-Hoy and board trustees. For the communication plan for summer programs, we really wanted to honor the fact that these programs are intended to be for the prioritized families. And so departments have really worked to make sure that prioritized families are receiving a warm welcome to these programs. Special education case managers have reached out to special education families who are prioritized for these programs. Curriculum and instruction has sent personalized invitations to prioritized families at the elementary and secondary levels. Expanded Learning has reached out to unduplicated families using targeted groups on Parent Square, and secondary counselors have recruited students in need of credit recovery to summer school. Following the recruitment of prioritized families, we are going to centrally put out a summer program guide for all families. But again, we really want this to be a warm welcome that is personalized to the prioritized families. And the purpose of the summer programs guide is really to raise awareness within our community about the types of summer programs that we offer.
And our summer programming sites for elementary will be held at Dover, Bayview, Obama, and Lincoln. And those will be combined sites, programs for Gen Ed and SPED. We will also have a SPED only program at Terra Hills and King Elementary. Our middle school programming will take place at Dijon and Soskin. And we will have high school programming at De Anza, El Cerrito, and Kennedy High. Next slide, please. We will hold professional learning for our summer school teachers on June 14th and June 15th. June 16th will be a teacher prep day. Our summer learning dates: summer school begins June 20th and lasts through July 20th, with holidays on June 19th and July 3rd and 4th. The other weeks will be 4-day weeks with no school on Friday. Next slide, please.
Good evening. So elementary will be both academic and enrichment program. So you can see it's the academics in the morning from 8:30 to 1, and then enrichment from 1:30 to 5:30. The secondary hours are 8:55 to 1:30, so starting a little bit later. Currently, there are 190 applications in for middle school and 955 for high school, and we expect that to go up appreciably in the next little bit, but that's pretty good for this time of year. High school structure focuses on credit recovery and really trying to get those credits in and get students prepared for graduation. As you look, you can see the teacher hours and the administration hours at the bottom, but those are the core programs. Next slide, please. So the areas of focus for elementary will be Springboard is going to be new to us this year, and that is targeted instruction, as well as strong professional development and coaching, as well as tracking growth data over the course of the summer. So we're really excited to be bringing that to the district. Secondary, I already spoke to for the most part with the credit recovery, and there is shorter seat time in a mastery-based learning program. And we are also expanding Edgenuity variable credit independent study to all of our high school sites this year. Next slide.
Okay, so I'll provide an overview for our ESY special education program. But first, before I get into the particulars, I just want to also acknowledge routine is very important for our students, particularly those in our ESN and MMSN classes. So the fact that we're able to provide this for all of those students throughout the summers is absolutely imperative. It's also a lot of fun. Having been a high school and middle school ESY principal before, the students have a great time interacting with their peers, both their disabled peers and their non-disabled peers. But also we do a lot of fun things. We do a field day through our adaptive PE program. Barbara Jellison's department, our food services department, always has provided a 4th of July barbecue for each of the school sites, which is a lot of fun. And there's just a lot of enrichment as well. One of the curricula we use is called Arts Attack. So students have the opportunity both online and with tangible arts materials to really engage in arts throughout the ESY program as well. So I'll get into the particulars, but also it is very enriching. It's a lot of fun, and it's a time where students from various schools get to know each other, and it's a really good opportunity. Additionally, so ESY or Extended School Year is the name of our special education summer program. It is for students who are at risk of significant regression, coupled with limited recruitment of skills in light of students' disabling conditions. That comes from 34 CFR that's listed there. It's an IEP team decision if a student is going to attend ESY. So this is something that is reviewed annually by the IEP team. A parent obviously has a say in that conversation, as does the rest of the IEP team. Traditionally, the overwhelming majority of our ESN and MMSN students do have the opportunity to participate. Unlike the Gen Ed high school program, this is not for credit recovery. This is based on IEP goals. So each student's IEP goals are the focus for that student's learning. We do have curricula that are shared across the classroom, but we focus specifically on the goals for each of the individual students. It is voluntary, but it is recommended for those students whose IEP teams have deemed that it's an appropriate service. But parents do have the option to opt in or out. It's not mandatory. Last piece on this slide is that it is in person, the delivery of instruction, as well as all of our related services that are listed there at the bottom of the slide. Next slide, please. Our classes in ESY are all self-contained. It's again mentioned not for credit recovery. The student day is 8:30 to 1 every day, the same dates as listed in the previous slide. Transportation is available to all students, particularly those that are attending an ESY site that is not their traditional site, but again, available to all students throughout the ESY program. Some parents choose not to partake in the transportation, and they're allowed to have reimbursement for their mileage. We have meals provided, breakfast and lunch for all students every day. And again, through first students still, just like we do through the regular school year. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier that it's an IEP team decision. There's some specific language here about what goes into making that decision. I won't read the slide to you, but again, it is reviewed each year in the annual IEP and determined whether the service will remain in place. So again, that last piece there is a question asked if my student had ESY last year, will they continue? Annually reviewed by the team. Our sites for ESY, King and Terra Hills, are 2 preschool sites. Our elementary sites are, again, King and Terra Hills. Dover, Bayview, Obama, and Lincoln are our MMSN sites. That's mild to moderate support needs, and ESN is extensive support needs. Our middle school sites are Soskin and Dejan, where both ESN and MMSN will be present. High school is De Anza and El Cerrito, again, both ESN and MMSN. And our transition program that I discussed earlier, the 18 to 22-year-old program, is at the Vista Hills campus, also ESN and MMSN. And I will now pass it to Kim.
Yes. Good evening, board. Dr. Hurst, I'm glad to be here to talk to you about the CSAIS Summer Enrichment Camp. Under the Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services Plan, we provide services to students across 4 school sites. Those school sites are King, Lincoln, Ohlone, and Shannon. And we're very fortunate to have funding available from our cycle that will end on September 30th, 2023. These funds have to be expended by that time, and we're extremely happy that we're able to utilize those funds to continue services for students over the summer. Over the 4 sites, we serve 252 students. We invited all of those families to partake in this opportunity, and currently we have 36 students enrolled at Ohlone, 30 students enrolled at King, and approximately 20 students enrolled at Lincoln. These services will be a continuation of what we're offering them during the school year. So during the CSAIS Summer Enrichment Camp, this will be site-based. The school site principals have been heavily involved in the planning and also the selection of staff. I've been heavily involved in creating a 4-week plan for these schools, and we're really excited about the opportunity for students. We'll have a STEM focus. We'll have a weekly study trip for these students so that we're enhancing not only their educational experience, but we're getting them out into the community in order to learn hands-on with some of the experts. Next slide. So our summer school dates are June 26th to July 20th. Our hours are 8 to 1. We're really thankful to the Expanded Learning Department because they've extended their services for our students in our program as well. So our programs will run from 8 to 1, and then there'll be an expanded opportunity from 1 to 5 at Ohlone and King. And also at Lincoln, they will fold into the expanded learning opportunities for the Gen Ed Summer School that's being held there. I also want to share that we did have an opportunity to have a program at Shannon, but due to that being our smallest site with the smallest number of students, we have only 40 focal scholars at Shannon. After speaking with the principal, she decided not to partake in this opportunity this summer for her students. I will say that those students have been served very well throughout the school year because they have a robust during the day intervention program and an after school program as well. So we're really proud to have been able to serve all of our students well and continue that service in the summer. This program is completely funded by CSAIS, and we're just excited and ready to go. So thank you for your attention.
All right. Good evening, board. Casey Blackburn Hadon for the Expanded Learning Office, and I am batting cleanup tonight. And the last few slides are about the K-12 enrichment offerings for our students and families. The Expanded Learning Office has been able to expand its summer learning footprint in large part to funding through ELOP. In addition to that, this summer, we have some one-time only ESSER III funds that we're also able to use. So you can see here that our vision for summer learning in the district is to provide historically underserved young people access to engaging high-quality enrichment programming that sparks their curiosity, connects them to the natural world, allows them to explore problem solving through hands-on STEM, and fosters their development as lifelong learners. The goal of the Expanded Learning Office when it comes to summer learning is threefold. The first goal is to increase opportunity, access, and utilization of summer program options for our children and families. Secondly, we partner internally with school sites and different departments to provide families with full-day summer learning options whenever possible. And lastly, our goal is to support transitions, elementary to middle school, and then again, middle school to high school. Accordingly, we've adopted the following summer model of a mixed delivery system. We have our A+B model, which is morning teachers and afternoon enrichment, our full-day summer camps that are led by our community-based organization partners, our bridge to middle and other secondary options. And then lastly, we partner with CBOs who are offering enrichment, summer enrichment in the community. And as you can see, our enrollment priorities are McKinney-Vento, Foster, students who qualify for free or reduced lunch, ELS, newcomers, and then siblings and students who can attend every day. Next slide, please. So on this slide, you can see all of our A+B sites. We have Bayview, Dover, Lincoln, and Obama with our elementary summer school sites. So these are hubs. We will be providing enrichment in the afternoon. So after lunch, students will rotate into a variety of different enrichments and will be there until 5:30 p.m. We are also doing site-specific summer intervention programming at Coronado and Perry's. We have a full-day program at West County Mandarin, and we are partnering with CSAs at King and Ohlone to provide additional enrichment for those students. Next slide, please. So this slide represents all of our full-day elementary hubs. These are all summer camps. So you can see we're partnering with the YMCA at Downer and Murphy Elementary School to provide full-day YMCA day camps. We're partnering with Adventure More, and they are providing STEM enrichment camp at Grant, Mira Vista, and Stewart. We're partnering with Freedom Schools at King Elementary School and Nystrom. And then lastly, we have a new partnership with Headwaters Science Institute. They are going to be leading our first outdoor STEM ed camp at Verdi Elementary School. Next slide, please. And then here you can see the secondary programs that we are offering, mostly through funding through ESSER 3. So we have a bridge to middle at Dijon, a bridge to middle at Soskins. We're partnering with Growing Together project for the Soskins internship work-based learning cohort. We're partnering with AIM High. They're going to be at 2 sites this summer, Helms and Mount Talbot. We have a new partnership with College and Career. The Construction Trades Workforce Initiative is going to be doing a week-long pilot for incoming 9th graders at Kennedy High School. We also have a Bridge to High School program at Kennedy. The next slide is a list of all of the different summer learning options at Richmond High School from their Bridge to Middle, their Bridge to High School, their newcomer enrichment, their pathway to calculus geometry, their African American Summer Leadership Institute, their ELA camp, their athletic academic support and conditioning program. They have an intro to fashion and a law research project, which is a pathway specific program. And then the last slide, we are partnering with the Ed Fund to support 4 Camp Achieve programs that are going to be in the community. You can see here, they're going to be at Nevin, Parchester, Shields Reed. The Booker T program is going to be moved to Stige this summer. And then in addition to that, we're partnering with a Practice Space and Richmond Arts Center, who are both offering week-long summer programs. And I am complete.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much to everybody who presented. That was wonderful. Let's move to, is there any public comment on this item?
There's no public.
Great. Board, are there any questions? Trustee Phillip?
Is there still time to enroll, particularly elementary school kids?
There is still time to enroll. We currently have about half of our spaces filled. We do have applications coming in, but we will continue to encourage families to enroll until all of the spaces that we have available are filled.
Okay, thank you very much. That's my only question.
Thank you. Are there, Clerk Smith Folds?
Will we have our CSSs on campus during the summer? Do they work on our campuses during the summer?
Yes,
Yes,
they're
oh,
assigned to each campus.
Thank you very much. I'm complete.
Okay, thank you so much. Board, any comments? Trustee Phillips?
So I know it's late and folks may or may not be watching, but a couple of years ago, my son, Mr. the Second, he went to summer school at Obama, and he had a ball. So for folks who are interested in summer school options, or just options period for their kids in the summer, because there is, the academic component, but there is enrichment as well. And the kids have fun. They really do. So yeah, I'm just putting a plug in. That's what I'm using my comment time for.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Trustee Reckler? Hold on a second, let us restart
It's
your
gonna be
time.
really brief. You
Oh,
don't even
okay.
have to.
Go
I
ahead.
just want to thank you for the very detailed presentation, and it sounds great. Thank you very much for your hard work. It's very apparent.
Thank you. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, staff, again. Appreciate it. Okay, board and community, we're not at the end. We are now going to move to comments from the Board of Education. I just want to congratulate all of you. It's 9:45, and I told my wife it was going to be 12 o'clock before I got home, so I'm really thankful to all of you. So let's put up 3 minutes. And then whoever would like to make comments can make comments. Trustee Phillips, we'll start with you.
Thank you very much. One thing that I want to say is that I have been late to some meetings, and I have missed a meeting, maybe two, but I know I missed one on the 3rd. I started, and some of you up here know this, but I started a new job, and I'm actually working out in East Oakland. And so I have some difficulty, obviously, getting back here for the start. I usually get out of work roughly around 6 o'clock. So that's why I've been coming late to meetings. I don't mean to disrespect the board. I don't mean to disrespect the public, but I did want to let all of you. Sorry, I did want to let all of you know what my personal situation is. So that said, I do want to talk about the contracts that are being reviewed. I want to thank the contract committee and the staff. And I believe the contract committee is led by Trustee Smith Folds. But I want to thank her. I want to thank the staff. I want to thank President Gonzalez-Hoy for the work that he's doing on it as well. But I do want to say that with the amount of cuts that we have to do, and I'm hearing 14 million, I know that it is a difficult task, and I've had to vote on contract cuts in the past. But if we've only identified $1 million in potential cuts for contracts, we have a long, long, long way to go. And truthfully, right, and I was just doing, basically some paper napkin math. If we were to say $14 million, if we were just to keep the 80-20% ratio, 80% to staff, 20% to everything else, if we were just to use that number, that would call for like $11 million in staffing cuts. Like, that's massive. And I don't think people understand what is going on and what is going to happen if we just use the 80-20 ratio that everybody talks about. Massive staff cuts are coming. And it's to pay. I said it. I'm just putting it out there. It ain't no hiding it.
Thank you, trustee Phillips. Trustee Reckler, do you have comments?
I do. I just wanted to share where I spent this afternoon. It was at Dianza at the Information Technology Academy, Computer Science, Senior Defenses, and it was outstanding, outstanding. You have to go next year. The projects were just amazing. Some kids made a fun calculator. One kid built a rocket and he's going out to the Mojave Desert to shoot it off. He's gonna try and get it to 65,000 feet. There was this AI chat GPT source thing where you put in your code and it told you whether you put in your essay and it told you whether it was AI generated, and it also gave you like a similarity index, like it would like somebody went in and changed like a few words. It was just incredible. So next year you have to go. And a lot of those kids are off to just amazing schools. Kids are going to UCLA, USC, Lewis and Clark. I mean, it was just go next year. It was just amazing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that just in some personal news, we're graduating our first from college. And I want to take a moment to thank all the educators here for seeing him through. He was well prepared and he had a great time and he was ready when he got there. And I just want to thank everybody here for not only the great education, but for the many opportunities that he was afforded. So thank you all.
Thank you, trustee Reckler. Trustee Christian, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I just have a few words. I just wanted to say, to everyone, it's been a challenging school year. We made it up to this point here, and we still have a lot of challenges to go, but we have to continue to, fight for our kids and make sure our students get the things they need. And I just want to say to the staff, you have done a wonderful job, hard work throughout the whole school year, and nothing is easy. Day in and day out, we come, we work, and we want to see the best. So basically, we have a lot to do. So thank you.
Thank you, trustee Christian. Clerk Smith Folds.
Thank you so much, President Gonzalez-Hoy. One of the things that I want to talk about is the fact that we have 14 days left. When we wake up in the morning, it's going to be 14 school days left to finish this year. There are some people who don't count down. I do count down. I count down because I know the struggle that our teachers go through for 180 days, the struggle that our administrators go through for 180 days, the struggle that our parents, our community members, and our students go through for 180 days. At the end of the 14 days, we'll have graduation season upon us. I want to talk a little bit about graduation. Graduation, when we go to graduations, we should keep a couple of things in mind as we travel through this season. We need to clap for all students, those going to 2-year, 4-year colleges and universities, or those going out to work. We need to clap louder for those who have struggled with friends, grades, or teachers. And we need to clap the loudest for those who had to walk through the mud of trauma, racism, anxiety, and a host of other things. They earn this. This is something that they deserve. And when they walk across the stage wearing their leis or their flag of origin or any other thing, they deserve it. When they walk across the stage in their hijab or their turban or their afro, they deserve it. So it's one of those things that graduation and commencement is a big deal. And I'm glad that the district has saw fit to have a graduation committee. I think that's going to be a huge shift in our district and a huge culture shift. And it's one of those things that, again, stops us from being zip coded. Every kid is going to see the decorations. Every kid is going to see the acknowledgement and the beauty and all the things that they have done throughout their 4 years of high school and their 13 years of education here. I also want to speak again to SPED. Dr. Hurst, if we're looking at one department that's doing it right, SPED's doing it right. Our special ed department is inclusive. Our special ed department is also educating parents. If you go to a CAC meeting, you leave smarter every time because it's a real education on how not only our special ed department works, but how our district works. If you go to any special ed event, you leave happier than when you came. Mr. Fleischman was talking about what happens in the summer. It's a great event. Their field day is a great event. When you go to the prom, it was a great event. So if we're looking for a department to model other departments after, special ed would be one that I would say is top tier. President Gonzalez-Hoy, thank you for always leading us promptly. I thought we were going to get out a lot later too. So I'm appreciative of the fact that you have led the board in the right direction. I encourage everyone to listen and come to the budget and contract committees. All voices need to be at that table. So we are going to have tough discussions softly, but we are going to have tough discussions and continue to have those. I'm complete.
Thank you so much, Clerk Smith-Folds. Trustee Barron? No comments? Thank you. First of all, I want to congratulate Trustee Reckler for your son graduating college and Clerk Smith-Folds for your daughter graduating high school. What an incredible accomplishments. I also wanted to give a shout out to Lori Roberts, who invited me to a AI and education conference, training conference. It was a 2-hour panel training. It was incredible. I learned so much about AI and education and how technology is progressing. So I just want to give her a shout out. I also want to thank our staff. I know that all of you are working incredibly hard, from our superintendent to our sites. Every day you're coming to work. All of you, including everybody here, is underpaid compared to other districts, underappreciated. And you still come every day and support our students that have a lot of needs. So thank you. We see you here and we appreciate you for everything you do. We know it's a lot. Graduations are around the corner. We have, I think, the first one Thursday for our African-American graduation ceremony. Honor ceremony, and then middle college on Saturday. Graduation season is my favorite. I always say it inspires me to continue to do this work, which I know is not easy for, as you all know, but it's incredible to see our students. My students that I taught second grade, my first year, are graduating high school, so I'm excited to see them walk, and I'm excited to hug all of them as they walk by. And then for the contract committee, we're working hard. Thank you, Clerk Smith-Folds, for leading us through that. Dr. Hurst, for you and your staff, because we've had to turn around that fairly quickly. Thankfully, we have a little bit more time now, but as Trustee Phillips mentioned, we haven't been able to find enough, right? So we have quite a bit of more work to do. But I wanted to thank so far Ms. Sanders, Ms. Neely Johnson, Ms. Hoffman. We have gone through those departments, and they were pretty prepared. I also want to thank Dr. McIntyre, because his department has also been supporting us through that work. Finally, I want to thank our labor partners, specifically Mr. De Leon, because he has missed quite a bit of work at his school that he's had to come back and do more. So thank you, because like I mentioned, because we were in this hurry with the county, we have met 6 times, a lot of the time during school or right after. So thank you to all of you for joining us through that, to make sure that we're able to transparently find savings wherever we can. And board, thank you again for a great meeting. Let's continue this great work together. That's it. Our next meeting is June 7th at the Jean Middle School. I adjourn the meeting at 9:57. Thank you.